Hello, good evening and welcome ladies and gentlemen to the commencement of the second half of the season in the UKSimRacing Sunday GT3 Championship Season 19 as brought to you on the premier sim racing platform available only on PC known as iRacing and proudly hosted by none other than SimRacing International. Indeed, it's time for round number 6 of 10 and we've made our way from Germany to neighbouring France for the most appropriate circuit to hold our second endurance race round of the season. It is none other than the circuit des 24 Heures du Mans, also known in short as Le Mans or the Circuit de la Sarthe, depending on your preference. But regardless of the name you choose, one thing that never changes about this circuit is the fact that this is a circuit that to take victory at it, where it be over 24 hours or a much shorter distance, you have to outlast it. Spanning the best part of 8.46 miles and consisting of 33 corners, this is the circuit that sees drivers spend the most time at full throttle throughout the entirety of the lap. At least 80% of the lap is full throttle, followed up typically by some very heavy braking zones, and it's going to be a brutal test on machine and driver as they make their way around this circuit that is steeped in international racing history. Where it be the infamous 24-hour event of the modern era that draws plenty of crowds to it as part of the FIA World Endurance Championship, or the very early days of racing here where it's far less safe and more about the maximum top-end speed and perhaps sometimes seeing prototype machinery end up in the skies. Well, regardless of the way whether our drivers are aiming high or aiming low, today we'll get to see exactly how they go as we catch up all the racing action as if it were live. Indeed, the race had occurred on Sunday the 9th of August 2026, but we bring it to you as if it were live today on Monday the 10th of August, and therefore it means here in the commentary booth we do not know what unfolds, whether it be in the qualifying session that's just got underway, or 30, and most importantly, where all the points are paid, is of course the one and only endurance race. But where my man has allowed me to welcome you all to this post-round broadcast from Circuit Side as you tune in today. And the one in place to catch all the racing action from the SimRacing International hosted series on a weekly basis, including the UKSimRacing Sunday GT3 Championship, and that is on youtube.com and search for SRI or SimRacing International. In the commentary booth you have myself, my name is Paul Walsh and I shall be your host and commentator for this season. And as we make our way into the second half of the season with round number 6, of course it's only appropriate bringing you up to speed with the story so far after 5 rounds and what exactly is on the cards and what can be expected today as we get the second half of the season underway. And as we do take a look back then at our calendar, we're coming towards the end of our standard round format. Only 2 more standard rounds to go before we make our way into the showdown period of the season, which will be rounds 8, 9 and 10 at Watkins Glen, the Red Bull Ring and the Suzuka Grand Prix Circuit. But of course, we're here for round number 6 at Le Mans, and what happened in the rounds that preceded it? We've had 2 back-to-back mixed weather condition rounds, and the Hockenheimring Baden-Württemberg's Grand Prix Circuit back on the 2nd of August. Well, the wet weather definitely played its part in mixing things up. Speaking of which, we did have a grand total of what was 48 drivers make their way to Germany for a mixed conditions race that in terms of the weather itself, we'd see the rain arrive right at the start of qualifying, meaning it was all about being the first driver out there and having one lap on the slicks before we did see the track conditions completely deteriorate and require drivers to be on the wet weather tyres, and then when the rain ended towards the end of qualifying, it would return 20 minutes into the race before stopping with only 5 minutes remaining in the race. So therefore we had a circuit that never really truly became dry, and it was just quite the lightning patches of a dry circuit, and then suddenly the rain would come back and completely flood the circuit once again, meaning that suddenly pace would oscillate for some drivers depending on how well set up and attuned they were to the mixed conditions. But in qualifying, those who were able to deliver a lap, well, none other than Philip Hammer was one of them, taking his third overall pro pole position by 2 attempts ahead of the returning Jason Baxter. It was great to see him back on the grid once again for Wild Ride Motorsports, and just behind we did see Hayden Young and Eric Gebhard lock out the second row with season best qualifying performances. How it would be 5th for none other than Michael Schutzer-Kederbach, teammate to Philip Hammer, looking to try and make it for the team back-to-back 1-2 finishes. As for the Interclass, Jack Wyborn took class pole with 7th overall, and he was almost 4 tenths faster than a season best qualifying performance from Dean Collins, although intriguingly, of course, with licence points picked up from the Hockenheimring due to a number of incidents in the race, it does mean, unfortunately, he will not be available for qualifying today. He will be serving a qualifying ban, but we can expect to see him on the grid starting from the very back. But we also got to see the pair being split by what was Wyborn's MRC Endurance teammate of none other than Stephen Parker Hamilton, who made it 2 club pole positions in succession, and he was almost 1.8 seconds faster than Daniel Pays, who started 14th, but 2nd in the class. Now, as we did see those rapidly deteriorating conditions, and many drivers did not get it right with regards to getting the qualifying laps together, there were some huge shocks, including 19th overall and 9th in the pro class for Mikey Stewart, and also your Road America Inter front starters, Ashley Brooks and Cy Ante line up at the very back of the field, 43rd and and 44th overall. And James Conley, of course, struggling for 45th overall and 14th place in club. And also we did see some difficulty for Adam Watson as well in the qualifying session, meaning that he would have to try and carve his way from much further back than he was typically used to. When we did go racing, well, there was a retirement on the grid for Steve Hughes, so we're down to 47 starters on a moderately wet circuit. As the field got away cleanly through the opening 5 corners, well, at the split square hairpin at turn number 6, chaos unfolded. There were some big incidents, most notable being the row 2 starters of Hayden Young and Eric Gebhardt being collected, and Tom Cordy as well having his own incident which sent him all the way to the back of the field. And further incidents would occur on the second lap, including Casper Brotner and Jack Barker coming together at turn 15, and it would force both drivers out of the race, sadly. But after that, the racing seemed to settle down quite nicely, and we started to see a dry line forming on the circuit, although still very much a circuit that's all about using the wet weather tyre. At the very front of the field, with Philip Hammer gradually pulling away, an aggressive start on lap number 1 for Michael Schütz back. His teammate would see him moving to second place, and the two started to break away from the rest of the field. Although Jason Baxter would also keep Schütz back honest until he could not, with a mistake on lap number 4 and a further one on lap number 8, relegated him down the order, handing third place over to a resurgent Mikey Stewart, and Baxter retired on lap number 15 following a third incident whilst running still inside the top 10. Adam Watson, he provided us plenty of entertainment, of course, finds his way from the back of the field through to third place, enjoying a fierce battle with Mikey Stewart for the podium on the final lap. However, a spin on the final lap going into turn number 1 would see Stewart close the gap, and the two would fight on circuit for the third place honours in the pro class, albeit an off track towards the end of the lap would see Adam Watson go over the instant point limit for a driver-through penalty, and so regardless of where he finished on the road, he would be relegated down to 4th place. In fact, he'd be relegated down to 8th place at the finish, and Mikey Stewart was able to take that third place on the road, with Adam Watson absolutely baying at his backside. Meanwhile, in the interclass, it was an intense 5-way fight for the win between Jack Wyborn, Martin Kenyon, Peter Cox, Thiago Reza and Tom Cordy, and the pace of individual drivers seemed to fluctuate depending on the wetness level of the circuit, whereby we got to see Wyborn, Cox and Reza look quick as the circuit started to dry and form that dry line. Meanwhile, when the rain did return, Martin Kenyon and Tom Cordy were in a completely different department of their own, especially Tom Cordy, who came through to win from the back of the field following his open lap incident, and Kenyon's own drive in the Acura should not be understated either. It is very impressive there, and really a sign of things to come for the man in the Acura when it comes to wet weather conditions. Cox and Reyes in the end settled scrapping for 4th place, although Cox was able to take it on the final lap. And in the club class, it was a question if anybody actually wanted to win the race in the end, with Stephen Park Hamilton's pole position being thrown away on lap number 4 due to a major error, and it would hand the lead to Daniel Pace. His own error on lap number 18 would cost him the strategic lead to Jordan Maymar, and albeit Jordan Maymar did end up making several mistakes of his own despite coming through the field from an 8th place starting class of 31st overall, but in the end it was the equivalence of his mistakes to those of many others, including the fast charging performance of Tom Wheeler, also the recovery of James Connolly and Christopher Bates, and it would mean that Jordan Maymar would bring home that win. And so, to give you a recap of your winners on the Hockenheim Ring, overall in Pro, it was Philip Hammer leading home a 1-2, the second of the season for the pole promotion with ASR Esports team, ahead of his teammate of Michael Schütz back by 21.4 seconds. In the interclass, Tom Cordy pulled off probably his best drive of his career so far in the UKSimRacing Sunday GT3 Championship, with the incredible first to last to first performance after that open lap instant, and he took that victory by 7.1 seconds ahead of Martin Kenyon, who brought home an absolutely infamous second place spot on the podium. And in the club class, Jordan Maymar, well, he may not have had the qualifying points he wanted, but he definitely had the race performance that he needed, and brought home that victory, and he was the only club driver to finish on the overall lead lap and take his first win of the season. But who exactly will be our winners today here at Le Mans, as we get ready to complete our time in the European continent for a brief period and make our way back to the US of A for Daytona in a week's time? Well, that's what we're here to find out today. But of course, as we make our way into this round, we also need to bring up speed with the standings after a grand total of 5 rounds. And here we can see in the Pro Championship, the top 12 is headed by Philip Hammer, the pole promotion with ASR Esports driver, right now leading by the best part there of 82 points at the teammate Michael Schütz back, and they are starting to put a bit of a ribbon on this with regards to trying to break away. Now, Hammer definitely with 4 wins in a row, you definitely think if he can make it 5 in a row today, he'll be looking very comfortable and he'll be starting to emerge as a clear early favourite, and so the focus is perhaps more on the fight for second, where his fellow countryman from Germany, Schütz has definitely taken that second place from Mikey Stewart, but given the fact that Mikey Stewart was able to rebound after such a tough qualifying session, is there a third podium on the card to him today? And indeed, will we see the same podium sequence once again, or will we see the same 3 drivers on the podium but shuffled around, or will we see some new faces on there? Mikey Stewart will be very keen to make sure that he stays on that podium if he wants to keep Schütz back within reach. Only 20 points behind him. was an on-finish for Harvey Wheeler. Drama for the Aversa Rapid driver, and therefore the defending champion falls to fourth on 260 points. He's 14 ahead of Wildrun Motorsports' Timo Gertner, and the German driver right now equal on points to Tim Probert, but it is the difference of result count back, with him having 2 fourth places to a single fourth place for the Send It Racing driver. 222 points. In 7th place is Adam Watson. 6th place last time out, not the way he wanted it to go, and in fact in the end taking the 8th place over on the road, but the results were jumbled around a little bit with some post-race penalties, and the McLaren driver right now on 222 points. 9 this season, he needs to get it into second gear soon, because otherwise he's going to be very reliant on the showdown rounds where 50% more points are available. Miller Boyd sits in 8th there, the American driver, on 210. He's 40 ahead of Jason Baxter, a non-finish for him after his return to the grid after missing 2 rounds, and right now definitely a season that's not going in the right direction, however expected to still put up a good fight. And Daniel Kovac completes your top 10 130 points, only 4 ahead of Ashley Coupland, and Nathan Anstis rounds off the top 12 for Team UKSimRacing. Then we come to the interclass, and here we can see it's Max Wheeler who still leads despite missing the previous round, so it becomes his drop score, and therefore he needs to be back right in form today in his Audi R8 LMS Evo 2, as otherwise he may find himself losing that lead soon. But of course, if he was absent, Robin Powney was also absent there for worst racing team ever. They didn't plan it together, I can tell you that, and therefore both are back today. But Tom Cordy returns to the top 3 to 240 points, equal points versus Wesley Van Rens as a result of his victory at the Hockenheim Ring. However, again, how hard he made it for himself, well, he's going to try and make it a bit easier for himself today, as he's tied on points Wesley Van Rens, but ahead on result count back. Speaking of which, the Revolution 3 with Lewis Homewood Racing driver, yet to find his way onto the podium, but he has proven relatively consistently finished inside the top 5 and not the top 10. Ashley Brooks completes your top 5 on 206 points, a non-finish for him as well last time out for Axis Sim Sport with Sim Coach, or Sim Works I should say, and unfortunately right now he needs to get himself a bit restarted in this championship. As always, 20 points behind is Thiago Reza. He has missed 2 rounds to be fair, but the Brazilian driver has been very consistent and finally notched his first top 5 of the season last time out at the Hockenheim Ring, just losing out in the battle for 4th place with Pete Cox. Luke Sherlock sits in 7th, the privateer, just ahead of Dean Collins by 2 points. Collins, of course, coming into this round with that qualifying ban. And we do have Jack Wyborn for MLC Endurance Team. Only 2 rounds attended so far, 2 podiums in 2 rounds. Can he make it a third today and perhaps his second win of the season? Matt Bacon rounds off the top 10 there for worst racing team ever, and he's only the best part of 10 points ahead of a Verso Fast Pete Cox, with Graham Vivas round off your top 12 there for Phoenix Racing. Then to the club class we go, and as we can see, Tom Wheeler wasn't quite the victory he wanted, but another podium. 3 podiums in a row, 340 points. He's gradually gapping James Connie, and that was the big focus for Tom Wheeler last time at the Hockenheim Ring, making sure he beat the Team UKSimRacing Hill driver. And so in doing so, he has extended that gap to 32 points, but look at the man who's moved into third, Jordan Maymar, with his first win of the season, now his second podium, 294 points. So we make it back-to-back wins today, he will get very much within touching distance of our championship leader. Daniel Pays, well, he's definitely proven to be highly consistent when it comes to podium finishes. It's either been podium or bust so far for the Portuguese driver Old Dudes in Cars, and will that continue today? And the 290 points he's got, he is the best part there, 42 ahead of Jordan Butler, who we haven't seen on the podium now for a couple of rounds. So that's 7th place finish for the Spectre Racing driver in Germany, and Ryan Abbott sitting the first part of 20 points behind him for Team Nubish, but in turn 6 points ahead of Matthew Hunter, who definitely had a lot of pace to show at the Hockenheim Ring, but unfortunately that pace was left on the table, and with it plenty of points that he could have taken for Simcast Racing UK. Jim Fox, always one to watch out for, albeit in the wet weather conditions compared to Road America, it didn't quite work out for the privateer for the Roadkill Racing team, and therefore he's now got to take a bit of a rebound out of this one, given he has now consigned a 12th place into his point standing as he missed the season opener. That is his drop score, and Gianluca Rosberg is only 8 points behind for Deep Motorsport, and taking another top 10 last time out and really making a habit now of top 10s is the Italian driver. Tobias Håkansson completes your top 10 there. The Hexagon Slow driver on 198 points. Head of his team at Harry Tuaminen. And Christopher Bates rounds off your top 12 for the Club Class Championship. As for the teams, very quickly, we do see lead in the way still. Pole promotion with ASR and 2 first and seconds back-to-back now. Can they make it a third in a row? Because if so, they'll be definitely breaking away even more as Averso Rapid meanwhile remain in second place. Despite the non-finish for Harvey Wheeler, they are still ahead of Simcast for Altitude 3M. And indeed, Altitude 3M losing opportunity there to propel themselves up into second with the drive-through penalty right at the end of the race there for Adam Watson, demoting away for a very valuable points finish, even though Jordan Maymar was able to bring home the win in class. Revolution 3 Racing sit in 4th for 426 points. They've moved from 5th to 4th, just ahead of Averso Fast, who slipped behind. And then we do see in 6th from the 414 of Averso Fast, it's the 406 there, Team UKSimRacing Hill. And they will be looking to try and make their way even further forward as they have gone from 9th to 6th and are definitely accruing points at a rapid rate of knots. Axis Sim Sport with Sim Coach, meanwhile, they return to the top 10 with Martin Kenyon's brilliant drive in club. So that's second place ish, and Mikey Stewart as well, making his way onto the podium. They're definitely on a bit of a run of momentum now, with Spectre Racing SimWorks UK in 8th place just behind. It's further 2 points to Phoenix Racing, with Tom Cordy definitely delivering a huge result at the Hockenheim Ring. Old Dudes and Cars Amnesia complete your top 10 on 342 points. They return to the top 10 for the second time this season. With Hayes' second place coming at a vital time to achieve that, and Wild Drive Motorsport meanwhile sit in 11th place. They're on 336 points, the best part there of 6 points off of the top 10, and it's all due to the 4th place in Pro for Timo Gertner has helped the team move back into that position, but can they get into the top 10 after today? We'll have to wait and see. But with regards to our host circuit, of course, is the circuit that's 24 Heures du Mans. It is the 15th iteration of the circuit. That's why it's referred to as number 15 in terms of its layout, as the 15th revision of the circuit revised as of 2018. That means the circuit located near the city of Le Mans in the Sarthe region of Pays de Loire of France. Well, 8.46 miles in length or 13.62 kilometres. Regardless of the units, however, it is 33 corners in total. Many of them household names, where it be Tetrouge at turn number 8, the Mulsanne hairpin at turns 14 to 15, all to the front of the Porsche curves, into the Corvette curves, and the Ford chicanes. And big thank you to iRacing.com, not just for their brilliant simulator, but the absolutely fantastic track maps contained within. But rather than talk you through a lap for a two-dimensional image, indeed, there's not too much elevation change to this circuit. Let's make our way back to the circuit side, see how our drivers are getting on, and also give you 1 or 2 on-board laps there to really whet your appetite of how our drivers will take their GT3 machines around this infamous French course. And so as we do make our way back to the qualifying session, what we can see is that Harvey Wheeler currently leads the way at a 3-minute 52.088. Tim Probert 3 tenths behind, and well, in fact, they're Harvey Wheeler improving now to a 3-minute 51.964, but it's still more time to be found out there. And well, how important is qualifying going to be? Many of you will be wondering, as Harvey Wheeler definitely putting a big emphasis on qualifying. It's a bit of an odd one qualifying at Le Mans, because given the length of the circuit, and we do have a 90-minute race here, you would imagine that over the course of an endurance distance, qualifying points is going to be less pivotal. You will be able to make up places. But there is a caveat, and that is because you have so many long stretches of tarmac, so many long straights, slipstream and having a slipstream partner to work with or being part of a pack can be extremely valuable, and being able to brave a little bit of bump drafting on those straights could also help you gain some time. So therefore, you do want to qualify quite well. Alternatively, you want to qualify yourself into a pack of drivers who you think you're going to be able to stay with and stay on the pace of, and then beat them on strategy in the pit lane. Qualify towards the back of the field and not be with your classmates. So if you're a pro driver and you end up qualifying all the way towards the very back, and right now there's a risk of that for Hayden Young in extended racing, given he's not got a lap time on the board thus far, and indeed he's classified as 39th out of our 45 plus drivers. Well, then he's going to have to try and carve his way through the field very quickly and find somebody who will be on even pace or is willing to bump draft with him, because otherwise he'll suddenly start to lose a few tenths a lap, and a few tenths or at least a whole second over a lap, that is definitely going to be massively detrimental, as he won't have the opportunity to fuel save when drafting the pack. Instead he's going to push very hard, pushes way too hard there as he makes his way all the way into the gravel trap coming off the side there of Indianapolis Bend, and well, a very easy place to make a mistake, and I suspect that was an aggressive downshift there, and the rear axle spinning up for the McLaren 720S Evo, and sadly for Hayden Young it means he's got to go again, and with only 10.5 minutes left on the qualifying clock. And well, we do have overtime available, of course. He's only going to get a grand total of 2, perhaps 3 more laps in, depending on how quickly he can get to the time in line. But we've jumped ahead, haven't we not? Because we were talking a little bit about Harvey Wheeler being the fastest out there at the moment. But who's second fastest? It's Tim Probert, Hayden Young's teammate for Zenit Racing. And he's definitely coming alive in that McLaren. And we have seen in the officials coming into this round, which we do follow the officials to a degree with regards to our racing calendar for this season of the UKSimRacing Sunday GT3 Championship, that the McLaren has proven to be an absolute weapon around Le Mans circuit compared to some of the other GT3s. Of course, it comes and goes. That's the iRacing balanced performance, and therefore every car's going to have its heyday, and every car's going to have a bit of a mayday day, if you will. Right now, Tim Probert rolling his way on through, definitely looking rapid out there, but the fact we have a Ferrari on pole, a McLaren currently second, and then the Porsche Philipp Hammer, championship leader in third, which just goes to show you as well the fact that we do have 3 very capable machines up there, and it's not going to be in the McLaren Cup necessarily. And well, Philipp Hammer right now, of course, a staple of Porsche Cup racing, and before we did see the Pogo suspension effects arrive with the most latest iteration of the Porsche 992 Cup car, and therefore make his way into GT3 racing for this season. Very happy to have him here, and right now definitely setting a huge bar in his Porsche 992 GT3 machine. And how high can he raise that bar today? Can he make it 5 wins in a row, 6 podiums in a row since the start of the season? The only disruption, of course, being the season opener we finished in second to Harvey Wheeler. Where so, well, Philipp Hammer definitely will be making it very clear to everyone that right now, unless he has a disastrous final 3 rounds in the showdown rounds, he is going to be a tough cookie to beat. But as he heads in towards the braking zone there for the first of the Mulsanne chicanes, who's in the pit lane, who is your interpole system at the moment? It's Adam Lynch, who you see parked up there. And right now, getting ready to go once again in due course. And we get a bit closer camera angle there. Lynch just waited patiently here, very happy with his lap. That 3-minute 52.790, and equal on pace in a way, given the fact it's only a temp between them. Max Wheeler and Temp can be found very quickly here at Le Mans, but definitely missing the previous round at the Hockenheimring. And our Audi driver there, championship leader in the Interclass, not losing any pace at the moment. I think he'll be very happy there. And I think both drivers now waited to see if anybody else improves. With Ashley Brooks currently the third fastest in your Interclass, and with the Axel SimSport driver back here today and back with a bang. But understandably, he finds himself in some very close company once again with a man he's no stranger to, Cy Anthony, who's currently the full fastest year into drivers, 11th, and only 1.2 tenths off of the back of Brooks' time, a 3-minute 53.579 for the Ferrari 296 driver. And Cy Anthony does have a history of going quite well here at the Le Mans circuit. It is a circuit he seems very comfortable at for UKSimRacing Stewart. Of course, Ryan the Tartan played there on the car as he makes his way through the right-hander at Tetrud and using all the road and the runoff area as he's legally allowed to do so. And we'll tell you a little bit more about that very shortly we get an on-board lap. But let's continue to talk a little bit about our drivers. Now, sadly, not in the car and not in the pit lane. Ryan Abbott's is currently the fastest club driver, 21st overall. Made that 22nd overall, actually, because this man, Luke Sherlock, has just demoted him down to 22nd place. Sherlock there, done in a 3-minute 54. A nice lap there, and well, he'll be hoping for a bit more, however, given the fact he's currently 10th fast in the Interclass, but the Interclass pace is definitely looking to be very high today. And in fact, we've got a lot of Interdrivers interspersing themselves amongst pros. And it can happen at some circuits, particularly circuits such as Le Mans, that are very popular on the simulator and in real life. But suddenly you see a lot of drivers who would typically be expected a bit slower, perhaps. They suddenly find a lot of pace out there, and the margins become very marginal as Luke Sherlock there decides to go straight on the Tete Rouge to tow to the pit lane. But if we can't see Ryan Abbott at the moment, we can see the second fastest of your club drivers, and Steve Parker Hamilton. Well, is this going to be the end of his pole position streak? He's had 2 in a row so far. He would ideally like to make it 3 in a row if he can. He's currently the second fastest, and the delta between him and Abbott's at this time is a grand total of 3.5 tenths. That's a bit of time out there, and I wonder if Abbott's was able to find some slipstream over the course of his lap to aid him in his conquest towards what would be that pole position. We will have to see, as Jordan Maymar is currently the third fastest of your club drivers, down in 30th at the moment. And here's Delta, as you see him there parked up in the pit lane, just ahead of Adam Watson's McLaren, and that's the BMW M4 Evo for Simcast racer Jordan Maymar. Well, to Parker Hamilton, he is 7 tenths down on pace, but I think Jordan Maymar in his BMW will be looking more towards the race and knowing that he can blast past there with the bearish and Lotte Birken 6-cylinder machine. But with our rundown of the top 3 so far in this qualifying session, each of our classes covered. And Jeffrey Damon just tried to put together a much stronger lap. He still stays in 9th place overall, but he did set a purple sector midway through the lap. In fact, it was going through the Porsche curves, which was the fastest of everybody. Well, Damon not quite happy with how this is going at the moment, as meanwhile Mikey Stewart does improve. And also something that's worth noting there, before I forget to mention it, as it's put out of view. And can we get a better view? Yes, we can. Well, I do believe the Axis SimSport team's running a new set of liveries today, and I suspect they have been put together by this man, Ashley Brooks, as part of AB Designs, or Ashley Brooks Designs. Lovely liveries out there. I think they are sporting them across all of the Axis SimSport cars, whether they are as part of the SimCoach outfit or the SimWorks outfit. And, well, lovely liveries. Ashley, you have done a stellar job, I can tell you that. Look forward to seeing how those liveries fly high today here at Le Mans. But without further ado, we need to get you an on-board lap or two, ladies and gentlemen, because there's nothing quite like a lap at Le Mans unless it's on board inside a very ferocious GT3 machine. Who's going to be the one we ride on board with today, I hear you ask? And well, we do jump aboard, I think, very shortly with Tim Probert. Now, I have noticed that we do have Dean Collins out there, and I must apologise for a bit of misinformation I've given you. I said that Dean Collins has a qualifying ban. No, he has a drive-through penalty for 10 licence points, but more of that shortly, as we do see Tim Probert heading to the timing line, and here we go for what will be his penultimate flying lap. In fact, he's going to back off there because he's just taken pole position. Perfect timing, some would say, for him to do so. A 3-minute 51.770, and I think Tim very happy with that lap, and I don't think he's going to try and go any quicker. I think he's done enough now, as he does tow to the pit, so instead we're going to have to find somebody else to try and jump aboard with. And well, we would have gotten away with it too if it weren't for that pesky fastest lap from Tim Probert, as Scooby-Doo and the gang would say. But right now, who will we jump aboard with? Well, in fact, we're going to get on board with Daniel Paynes in his Ferrari 296 as he heads up the hill in the old duty car's Amnesia machine. But has he forgotten how to lap them on? Let's find out. He's going in towards Dunlop curve. They're using all the runoff area to open up the corner and go flat out into the braking zone for the Dunlop chicane. Down to second gear, left into right, cutting as much curb as he dares without getting at the risk of the track limits. As he comes out to turn 4, somebody got around there, but he managed to dodge them just about as he weaves his way downhill through the S's and in towards the left-hand of turn number 7. As he comes on through there, left into right, and as he exits out, well, now it's in towards Tetra Rouge. He goes, looking to his left-hand side for a brake mark. It will be the light board there. That will be his sequence marker. And well, in terms of track limits there, as long as you keep 2 wheels on the exit curb, you are within limits. As soon as all 4 go beyond the exit curb, you'll pick up a huge slowdown and you'll invalidate the lap. But now powering his way down the first part of Mulsanne, with the 2 chicanes introduced, of course, in response to what was the high-flying Mark Webber Mercedes CLK GTR in the 1990s. And well, since then, those chicanes there to bring the speeds down and make sure even prototype machines don't exceed more than 200 miles an hour. And now looking to go onto the brakes here for the first of the chicanes. Trowell breaking his way all the way down from 6th gear to 3rd, but he dropped to 2nd here coming over the apex. No, he stays in 3rd to get better traction out of the corner. And now flat out he goes once again down the second part of Mulsanne. Now, for those of you who like your scenic view, you'll find if you look to the right, although you won't be able to see out the cockpit of the car, there's actually a golf course hidden behind that tree line there, something that's not known. Many of the sections of Le Mans being public roads, as you'll notice by the road markings, and there's businesses, golf courses and houses situated around the circuit. Then the arm-card barriers are put up on race day, and indeed residents are required to stay indoors or go elsewhere. But breaking his way now in towards the second part of the Mulsanne chicane sequence. Trowell breaking all the way down to 3rd gear once again. Lovely lines there. Ooh, a little bit of understeer just creeping in, but he'll get away with that. Use all the track limits there quite liberally. Track limits quite liberal, to be fair, coming through the Mulsanne chicanes. And well, Pays now makes his way on down and weaves a little bit there. And I think just checking the steering after hitting that curve to make sure all is okay. But I think we're going to stay on board the lap here. And Pays will have to get himself set for another one, perhaps. In towards Mulsanne corner he goes, breaking his way there on the apex of turn 14 to set up the hairpin of 15, which is where the corner name comes from, in the fact that it is situated right next to the centre of Mulsanne village. And there's a roundabout to the left, and if drivers do go straight on there, they are required to do a lap of the roundabout for the purposes of safety to rejoin. They can pick up speed and maintain it going into this final stretch. Now, Pays definitely has invalidated his lap. He's going to weave his way down, and so we are going to jump off board for the moment, because he's not going to be at full pace for the remainder as he heads down towards Indianapolis. And I suspect where he's understeered a little bit wide at the second Mulsanne chicane, it has invalidated a lap. But good to see him still out there as he now makes his way in towards Indianapolis, the right into left-hander. As he does so, coming back to Dean Collins for a brief moment, just to formally confirm, he does have 14 licence points on his Sunday GT3 Championship licence for this season, and he has exceeded the 10 licence point limit, so he does have a drive-through penalty, and that must be served by what is the end of the race. He cannot serve it at the start, so he can't be on the formation lap and duck into pit lane immediately. He can serve it at any point from the end of lap 1 of the race all the way through to the penultimate lap of the race. He must come into the pits and drive through, and he couldn't have picked a worse place to pick up a drive-through penalty, because the understandable reason it is a long pit lane. You spend a very long time on the limiter here. Not quite as long as Road America 2 rounds ago, but definitely quite a long trip down the pits for Dean Collins, and I think he's getting himself all practice for it right now as he takes it easy. He'll be starting 27th, given he is making his way in. But as we do see Philip Hammer making his way onwards, well, can we continue the theme of not on board lap with one of our drivers? Now, as much as we'd love to ride on board with Philip Hammer, we also do want to give a bit of camera time to some of our other drivers out there. And well, can we potentially get an opportunity to ride on board with somebody else as they make the way on through? Well, here is Matthew Hunter, and in fact, we continue the story with Matthew Hunter as he makes his way down towards Mulsanne. So we're just going to get a little bit of a repeat from earlier as he heads down towards Mulsanne village. And as he does so here, the SimCast Racing Aston Martin V8 Vantage Evo driver goes onto the anchors, coming all the way down from 170 miles an hour, and goes a bit deep on the brakes there. I think he might be caught out a little bit. Perhaps he's picked up a toe over the course of that stretch, and we wasn't expected to be about 3-4 miles an hour quicker than he normally is. But either way, Hunter was able to keep it in track limits, so we continue our journey as he now makes his way through the kinks and all the way down towards Indianapolis. Gets him ready for one of the toughest corner sequences in the world, Indianapolis in towards Arnage, because what you'll see here is he's going to be flat out, and then Sonny looks to his left-hand side for what will be his turning marker, and he'll have to lift off the throttle a little bit here as he throws the car into the right hand. Or does he go flat out? No, in fact, he does come down off the throttle and onto the brakes as he now makes his way through the left-hander, and in second gear, gets him ready for Arnage. Looks to the left-hand side, and it will be the brake marker at the 50-metre board there. It's the latest you're going to brake. Come down to first gear, now stamp the throttle and power your way up towards the Porsche curves. Now, the lap for the most part has been stop-start for what's been the opening 2/3. Now it's all going to be about rhythm and flow for the remainder. as he gets ready to attack the Porsche curves, as he makes his way along the tree line, using all the road width there to straighten up the line in, and well, looks to his right hand side for his left hand side for his turning marker, throws the car in, drops down 2 gears, he does so, down to 4th, and now from the right, in towards the left here, run it as close as possible to the exit wall as you dare, for the second left-hander, and now into the right-hander that immediately springs to mind, a little dab of the brakes there, perhaps shed some speed, and now can he keep it nice and tight over to the right to open up the next left-hand as he goes into the Corvette curves, a huge amount of understeer there kicking in, and you can see he had to fight the car as the body rolled away from him as he completes the Corvette curves. Now in towards the forward chicanes, turns 29, turns 30, 31, 32 and 33, so he goes left into right here. This is the medium speed chicane, and then suddenly he's got to keep it pinned over to the right, onto the brakes he goes, the lower speed chicane bouncing over the curbs in second gear, and that completes the lap of Le Mans. It's brought to you by Daniel Pays and Matthew Hunter, being brought to you by 2 of our club drivers, as Hunter crossed the line there does make a personal best, a 3-minute 58.967, that is going to move him up into 10th place in the class, albeit not quite on the pace of Daniel Pays, who's currently the 5th fastest, but the laps are previewing right now. The clock has gone to 0, which means we are on our final laps, and Harvey Wheeler right now making his way down towards Indianapolis and trying to find a little bit more time. Before he gets there, we do have Pete Cox heading towards the timing line. He's just making his way out of the Corvette curves. Keeps him in track limits just about. Very difficult one there at the end of the Corvette curves. In fact, you have to keep 2 wheels within the white line, as I understand it, coming out of that fast left-hander. If you do not, it will be an invalidated lap, and you do pick up a very severe slowdown penalty for it, particularly in the race. But here we can see Cox right now using all the road, but at this point, heads towards the line. I don't think this is going to be an improvement. He hasn't set a personal best sector out there. And well, it's going to be a 3-minute 54.060. Not quite on the 3-minute 53.70 he's previously set. We have Daniel Pays making his way on through in the stealthy black Old Dinsey Cars machine. They do have 2 different editions of the livery of this car, of course. A white onto blue and a black onto blue. But right now, whether he's being left feeling black and blue or not, we'll have to see based on the final lap he sets. As Harvey Wheeler winds his way through and the Porsche into the Corvette curve sequence, and well, a little bit too much curve there coming into the right-hander. Something tells me that perhaps he just carried a bit too much speed, or perhaps his line was off. He's experimented here. He's currently the fastest driver, so he doesn't need to worry too much, perhaps, given the fact that nobody else is out there who's going to be matching him based on pace. But Harvey Wheeler right now is going to see if he can raise the benchmark even higher from that 3-minute 51.627, perhaps get it into the 3-minute 51.4s if he can. He has set some personal best sectors around the lap, but he's also had some down sectors, heads towards the line, flashes headlights, and it's going to be a 3-minute 51.126. Harvey Wheeler was definitely going some. An incredible lap for him, and that is definitely going to lock in pole position for overall and pro for Harvey Wheeler. And well, as we do see Daniel Pays coming through, he's on a personal best. He's currently 5th fastest in club, 34th overall. Could this be good enough potentially for club pole position? We'll see as he heads towards the line. He's got a high benchmark to beat versus Ryan Abbott. It's 3:55.403. It puts him 4th in class, just ahead of Jordan Maymar. Finding a couple of attempts there, and will put himself a 10th ahead of Maymar. And well, Maymar's going to look at his timing sheet shortly and see Sonny. He's not going to be the man who is on that 4th place spot anymore. I think he'll be a bit frustrated at that. But qualifying is complete here at Le Mans. Harvey Wheeler taking the overall and pro pole position, making amends for the difficult qualifying session on Hockenheim Ring, and also trying to make amends for his non-finish there. He'll be joined on the front row by Tim Probert, with Philip Hammer and Mikey Stewart round off your top 4 all-pro drivers. And Adam Lynch, he'll be starting in 5th place. There you can see him parked up in the pit lane. That's going to be your interpole position. And well, then we do have Max Wheeler returning to the grid after missing the Hockenheim Ring, and he'll be 7th. The 2 of them split by Timo Gertner, but otherwise the 2 inter drivers separated by only a 10th, if that. And Ashley Brooks and Cy Anti will line up on the 7th row together. Indeed, they seem to be inseparable when it comes to qualifying on the same row, with Jack Wyborn and Pete Holt and Peter Cox right behind them, completing your top 7 of the inters. Meanwhile, in the club class, you'll have Ryan Abbott's taking his maiden pole position of the season. Well done to Ryan for that. And his Aston Martin V8 Vantage Evo for Team Lubish. And well, he will have the best part of 4 places between him and 2nd place starter Stephen Parker Hamilton, whose pole position streak has come to an abrupt end. And we will see Tom Wheeler joining him in what will be 29th, 3rd of the class in this Ford Mustang. And you have to go back to Daniel Pays and Jordan Maymar 32nd and 33rd to complete the club top 5. But Ryan Abbott's finding that pole position in class in by the best part of 3.5 attempts. Could that be the margin with which he's able to outpace his rivals today? For all that and more, we will definitely see, ladies and gentlemen, as we do look to the sky, and with it the Dunlop bridge, although sadly no longer there, I do believe. The Dunlop Bridge, it has been replaced, and well, one of the big historical sites, if you will, of the circuit, and it has been preserved, of course, in iRacing for generations to come. And that's the wonderful thing about the simulator. When some major changes are made to the circuit, things that we definitely miss, well, they're always kept for posterity, and that's why Oran Park Raceway will always live on in iRacing, the circuit that was demolished in Australia in the early 2010s to make way for a suburb for Sydney housing, and well, now, of course, living in the iRacing simulator. But that's Australia, that's in the past. We're here in the present, we're here in France, and very shortly we will be seeing our drivers make their way into the warm-up session, after which they'll be getting ready for 90 minutes of racing here at the formidable French circuit. Have we had any surprising qualifying, perhaps? Well, not too many that I can see, but right now, we can't really draw on those anymore, because it is time to go into the warm-up session. And so, 5 minutes begins to tick away. This is the only time our drivers will really get to take a bit of a breather here at Le Mans before they do go for 90 minutes of race. And after that, it is going to be no holds barred, full out, flat out action all the way to the very end. So what will our drivers be thinking about at this point, other than perhaps they need to take that all-important bathroom break or make sure they've definitely put the right setup in the car? Well, setup's definitely going to be a key part of racing at Le Mans. Now, the big theme here, of course, with the lap being 80 to 85% full throttle, you need to run as little downforce as humanly possible. The less downforce you run, the higher top end speed you can achieve. Also, which gearing stack do you go for? If you do have the option to change the gearing stack on the GT3 machine, some do not. We want the tallest gears available typically because you'll maximise your top end speed. The only downside, of course, for going for maximum top end speed and also the minimum amount of rear wing is that towards the end of the lap, when you do make your way through the Porsche curves, the Corvette curves on the forward chicanes, you not only struggle for downforce and therefore struggle for quarter speed, and also the same earlier on at Tetra Rouge, for example, in the S's that precede it, but also you'll find that your ability to build speed coming out of the corners will be compromised because the longer the gear you have, and this extends all the way through first through to 6th gear, all these GT3 machines having 6-speed sequential boxes, albeit double clutch sequential boxes, which means they do have the paddle system that you now see in modern sports cars, and of course I do believe conceived, I want to say, in Formula 1 in the 1990s, and I believe it was Ferrari who conceived it first, although don't quote me on that. I do think it's either Ferrari or McLaren, but I want to say it was Ferrari that conceived the paddle gearbox system, and it was rolled out as a bit of a prototype, and then it became the mainstay of Formula 1, and that technology has very quickly made its way into GT racing. So much so now that you'll definitely find that most cars you drive on the road, if you drive an automatic, will have some sort of paddle system, even if it is a CVT gearbox, whereby it doesn't actually have any gears, but the paddles are there to make you think that you are shifting gears. And well, there's nothing quite like shifting gears, I can tell you that, although there'll be some of you sat there right now thinking, hold up a second, flappy paddles, whatever happened to a good old H-pattern box or a sequential shifter? To be honest with you, I've driven all three. I'm with you with the thought of what is a standard H-pattern shifter or a sequential shifter. As much as I used to be a big advocate for automatics with paddle systems, as long as you actually had a gear, indeed, don't ever put me near a CVT, ladies and gents. Well, I'll be constantly asking you where are the gears, but still, each to their own. Everyone has their own preference. Of course, we have electric machines now with no gears at all, unless you do run something along the lines, let's say a Honda Super N, which we're going to the United Kingdom later this year. The K car, that is an electric car as well, and well, can be found in purple as a standard colour. Alternatively, say the Hyundai Ioniq 5N or the Hyundai Ioniq 6N, where they do have the simulated gearbox systems there to make you feel as though that you are in a sequential shifting car, even though it is fully electric. It's crazy what modern technology can do. All these newfangled bits of machinery, I can tell you that. But right now, where were we? Well, we were talking about, of course, the 6-pattern gearboxes in these machines, and the idea being that you want to run minimum downforce and run the gears as long as possible. So what it means is that with drivers thinking about setup, they'll want to make any tweaks they need to give themselves the best possible comfort going through the corners, because top end speed is what is going to make and break your time in Le Mans, but just having that extra mile an hour corner apex speed can also just give you the tiniest advantage. That's going to be absolutely critical. Fuel tanks will fill to the brim, and fuel saving could go a very long way as well. Also be interested to see just how many tyres are going to be changed by drivers. Strategy is really going to make as much of a difference as it will be outright one lap pace. And well, given the fact we saw in our last endurance race round, and that was all the way back cast your mind all the way back to Road America, well, there we had mixed conditions, so it was a very different story, where you did see, of course, Robin Panier and Dean Collins, worst racing team ever, gamble on the one-stop strategy, and if it were not for a bit of a fumble into a gravel trap for Dean Collins on multiple occasions, and also Robin Panier making a few mistakes on his own, we could have seen him steal away what would have been a 1-2 potentially in the interclass, if not the overall proceedings for an overall podium. And well, in the end, they just go to show you the fact that with the wet weather conditions arriving literally at the halfway point of the race, where many needed to take on the fuel saving was absolutely victorious in terms of being able to go into one-stop strategy, only for them to see it all slip out of their hands. But with dry conditions expected here today all the way through the day, albeit a bit of cloud perhaps in the air, you would imagine this is going to be a bit more of a conventional two-stop race, where we will see those fuel tanks need to be topped up once fully, and then perhaps a small splash and dash. But of course, you can chop and dice the pit stops as well. Most drivers will be starting a full fuel tank, but will anybody decide to start with a slightly less full fuel tank to give themselves a quicker car early on, particularly if they've not qualified too well? Not saying Wesley Van Rens, the reason why we panned to him is because he's qualified poorly, but we're just showing you another driver out there. But again, some drivers may decide they want to go the lighter car early on to give themselves a bit of a sprintish pace, but of course that comes to the caveat they've got a shorter opening pit stint. Well, there's many ways of cutting it, but without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, who's going to cut it right, who's going to cut it close, and who's going to cut it too fine? Well, let's find out, because here we go to the grid for our one and only race down the schedule. It's the 90-minute endurance race, the second of the season here, for round number 6 of the championship at Le Mans. And as all our drivers make the way onto the grid, this is their lineup for a one and only race today. Harvey Wheeler takes pole position, returns to the front row, and with it, the top step of the grid for a Verso Rapid. Joined on the front row by Tim Probert for Send It Racing. His first front row start for this season, my memory serves me correctly. Then we do have Philip Howard for pole promotion with ASR starting in third. The German driver, championship leader, missing out on pole by 1.2 seconds, but will he bat an eyelid at that? 9, it's the race where the points are made and paid. Mikey Stewart, a late imprint in qualifying, propelled him to the second row for Access SimSport Sim Coach, with Adam Lynch, your Interpol sister there for Eurotitans Endurance. He'll be very happy with that, and so will the ETE team. Now, can he convert it into victory? Well, the good news is he's got a fellow pro on the grid with him on the third row, Timo Gertner for Worldwide Motorsports, and not his closest into qualifier, because behind him is Max Wheeler, championship leader of Verso Fast, and backward bang today. Then we do have the Hungarian star of Eric Gebhard for DRX Esports, followed up by Hayden Young for Send It Racing, and Adam Watson for Simcast for Altitude at 3M Esports, and well, he'll be looking to move forward from that 10th place. Starting 11th, it's Miller Boy for Send It Racing Bulls, ahead of Jeffrey Damon for Worldwide Motorsport, with Ashley Brooks, third of Unit to Drive, starting 13th. Next is SimSport Simworks Drive, joined there by Sight Anti for Team UKSimRacing Stewart, and then we have Jack Weibel for MRC Endurance Team, and Peter Holt for Send It Racing Bulls behind him. On row number 9, Peter Cox for Verso Fast, and Daniel Kovac for DRX Esports. They're followed up by Wesley Van Rens for Evolution 3 Racing, and Troy Anderson for Worldwide Motorsports. Go outside the top 20, you'll find 21st, it's Robin Panier for Worst Racing Team Ever, head of Michael Schützer back for pole promotion with ASR. Then we have Luke Sherlock, the privateer, head of Ryan Abbott's club pole sitter for Team Newish, his maiden pole position, getting converted into his maiden win for the season. Jack Barker starts 25th for Made for Racing in the company of the Brazilian Thiago Reza for Evolution 3 Racing. Then we do have Dean Collins with drive-through penalties to serve at some point in this race, started 27th worst rated team ever, head of Stephen Park Hamilton, second of the club drivers at MRC Endurance Team. 29th is Tom Wheeler for Verso Rapid, ahead of Tom Cordy for Phoenix Racing. And then 31st in this grid, it's Darren Sharples for Old Dudes and Cars Midlife Crisis, ahead of Daniel Payes for Old Dudes and Cars Amnesia. Jordan Maymart, 33rd, ahead of Alan Lever. And then we do have Nathan Anstis and Hendrik Zilk together on that 18th row. Row number 19, it's going to be James Connolly and Christopher Bates, ahead of Jordan Butler and Ryan Clark. And then we do see outside the top 40, 41st, it's Matthew Hunter, ahead of Tobias Hutchinson, with Gianluca Rospo and Steve G on row 22. The final full row consists of Casper Brotner, who struggled in qualifying, and David Pilcher. And last but not least, Harry Terminen, 47th on the grid. But we look back towards the front of the field, ladies and gentlemen. We've had to hop, skip and jump through those final few rows because they're almost ready to go, as they do tuck it behind the pace car just a little bit longer. And Harvey Wheeler right now will be leading the field very shortly into the forward chicanes. It will be expected to go too wide through there. They'll have to be very smart with each other. I am hearing in my ear that Tobias Hutchinson has actually towed to the pit lane. So he's starting from the pits. He's not going to be part of the formation. So it'll be 46 cars that actually start the race on the road. And we'll get to see Hutchinson start from the pit lane once all the field has cleared what is the pit safety line. But as the pace car gets ready to pull away, it'll be over to none other than Harvey Wheeler, the defending champion, to take us away for 90 minutes of racing action here at Le Mans. And it's go, go, go for the 6th time this season as Harvey Wheeler leads the field up the rise in towards turn 1. But as they do, we can see there Tim Brower and Mikey Stewart battling already as Philip Hammer being slipping down to 5th place. But as he makes his way up towards Dunlop chicane. Oh, and he goes round Harvey Wheeler. Takes too much curb early on and cold tyres, and the car goes completely sideways. He throws himself out to lead. Another driver getting it wrong as well in the rear of the picture. I think that was Luke Sherlock. One going to the grass, and well, Peter Holt as well getting it wrong. But we stay with those who've been able to survive. And as they make the way down right now, it's going to be Adam Lynch on the attack there as we see Philip Hammer passing Timo Gertner into the S's. And we'll side by side between Lynch and Gebhard. But in fact, Gebhard's going to be battling with Adam Watson. So in the end, Adam Watson trying to move his way forward as quickly as possible. Up in the 6th place now. Gebhard not too happy here as Max Weed on the inside into Tetrarude. And my goodness, it's all turned already. It's gone wrong there for Adam Lynch. Lynch into the barrier, car comes screeching onto the road. And does everybody manage to avoid it? We'll have to wait and see as we look to the blimp camera. And I think everyone is going to be able to avoid that now as the whole field is fanning out to a degree. So well done to everyone involved. Be very aware there of the yellow flags, and we'll meanwhile look a little bit further down as we do see Pete Cox here batting already. Wesley Van Rent and Troy Anderson as they power the way down towards the first of the Moleshead chicanes here. Well, it's going to be a fan out there, multiple 2, 3 wides, everyone trying to get themselves into the right position as they battle onwards. And looking a bit further back, Ryan Abbott, well, he's moved all the way up into 18th place in the Team Lewis Driver Club pole sitter, and right now still very much leading the Wayne Club as meanwhile Steve Parker Hamilton tries to make a move on. Somebody's got it wrong there, and I believe that is going to be, is that none other than Gianluca Rospo? No, in fact, that can't be Gianluca Rospo there. I think that's Thiago Reza trying to get himself back together. As Cy Anthony, from what I'm hearing, has had a bit of difficulty as well. Although I'm not quite sure what exactly has happened to Cy Anthony, so I'm not going to guess until we have any more facts to present to you, ladies and gentlemen. Basil Dry's coming down to us, the second Moleshead chicane. Meanwhile, Jack Barker, what a start he's had as well. All the way out to 19th place, moving up from 11th to 70 into class. He's just squeezed ahead there, Peter Holt. Holt going very much backwards. Jack Barker now going very much forwards with his old rival. But as they all even wind their way now down towards the Moleshead hairpin. Well, what's going on further down the order, I hear you ask? Well, Matthew Hunter going a bit too wide there as he does find himself in a bit of a battle. Oh, what on earth's happened there? Somebody's going all the way down the order. I think that might have been to try to take some very liberal use of track limits. Although saying that, there's James Connolly. Now, what's happened to the Team UKSimRacing Hill driver? He's dropped all the way to the very back of the field. 6 seconds on Tobias Hutchinson, who finds himself glued to the back right now. The man who started with the pit lane. Well, he's not afraid to get stuck in right away here. He's not a stranger to the grid. He's found some friends to play with as he's behind Cy Anthony and Adam Lynch. Both of them having difficult starts as well. Well, get some replays. Oh, and he goes round there. Harry Turminen goes round and literally in the end parks himself in front of his teammate Tobias Hutchinson. And in Adam Lynch finds himself being caught up as well. It's all wrong. Cy Anthony somehow Cy Anthony has not survived it too well. And that Ferrari right now, something tells me that's going to be making its way to the pit lane very shortly. But whilst all that's happening further behind, oh my goodness! And it goes round there, goes one way then the other. It's Weaver from side to side. It's Miller Boyd. He's all over the road like a drunken boxer. And the Senate Racing Bulls drive right now trying to get it back together. He just about does so. My goodness, how on earth did he manage to tame that? I will never know, ladies and gents, but that's testament to his ability to control the car. And that was swinging like a pendulum there. And something tells me right now for Miller Boyd, he won't want to do that ever again. The 118 driver, he gets it back together, falls to 13th place, but he gets so much more worse. As we got Troy Anderson carves his way out the inside of the Corvette. And right now the Z06 GT3 driver Wide Road Motorsports making an important move. Get ahead of Miller Boyd, and Tim Brower also squeezes his way through. This open up has been absolutely packed full of drama, and we've got plenty more to come, ladies and gentlemen. This is only one lap of many out there. We'll do the mathematics later to give you a rough idea of how many laps there's going to be. Right now, let's just stay in the present and enjoy all the racing of everything that's played out. Well, the fact that Ryan Abbott's been able to bolt away, you saw him just go through the bottom of the camera then, the bright and the yellow Team Lewis machine. Well, Steve Parker Hamilton slipping back to a degree. Tom Wheeler's now your second place club runner, as we have got a car coming into the pits. Now, who is that making the way down pit road? We will see very shortly. I think that's Tim Probert, in fact. So he decides to come down here, and, well, not 100% certain as to why, given the fact that he does not have a driver-through penalty to serve. That's Dean Collins. Now, when will Dean serve that penalty? That's also a consideration now. How does he best game the system to his advantage? As meanwhile, Jack Wybot heads on through. We'll keep an eye on Tim Probert and find out what's happened there. The only thing I can think of is potentially he's picked up a black flag drive-through penalty for a start line infringement. Or 30, he's got some damage to the car that we do not know about. And we'll soon find out as he makes way down pit road. I think he's not going to stop. I think he's got a drive-through potentially for jumping the start. No, in fact, Tim has just parked up, and the car is being looked at by the team. So doing some work with Ascendant Racing. but on camera you have got Jack Wyborn. Well, you had Jack Wyborn. He's disappeared to the ether, and he's now come back. He's a bit of a spectral assassin, is the MRC Endurance team driver right now, going from here to there and everywhere. And right now he's behind Ashley Brooks with Wesley Van Rens following him as well. As that second, third and fourth you see these cars together. Max Wheeler right now leading the class. We do see a slowdown there being served for Jeffrey Damon, and unfortunately to burn that slowdown for running wide at Tetra Rouge. It's always painful when you get a slowdown there, because the only way you burn it is by lifting and coasting all the way down the Mulsanne straight. Alternatively, you've got to put the brakes on very early into other corners. Either way, you are going to be losing a lot more time than the slowdown is worth. Meanwhile, further back there, that's 3 wide. You're going to have Tom Wheeler on the right side of your picture. Tom Cordy tucks in behind it all with his Wheeler pounding it. And Tiago Reza, oh goodness me! And Tiago Reza into the barrier. And in the end, the Revolution 3 racing car comes to an abrupt halt in the gravel. A bit of a tap there. Couldn't quite see who did tap it with the 393. They're definitely worse aware there. And get himself back together now. And as he does so, Darren Sharple's coming through. Nathan Astis as well, so Tiago Reza drops all the way down to what is going to be towards the bottom end of the top 35 here. I think he will now pick up the pace, and he'll have Ryan Clark to the front of it. He'll try and tuck in behind it to use a bit of a slipstream magnet and put himself back into the fight if he can, unless he's got some significant damage on the car, which I suspect the front left of that car. In fact, you can see there the car is slightly jutted at an angle with the body works. I think Reza has got a left leading car now. That's going to hurt him in any corner. That's a right-hander. Oh, as he makes his way in towards the chicane right now, he's definitely going to want to try and survive, get an understanding of how the car is now going to behave. And if he can't get it together, he may have to come into the pit lane. But Gianluca Rospo, right now, he's not got that to worry about. Instead, he's enjoying plenty of fighting as he makes his way down the final stretch of the Mulsanne. He's battling side by side with Matthew Hunter. You can't see that on the camera because he's drafted his way past Hunter at the moment. He's picking up the distant side toe there of Jordan Butler's car, and both of them fighting over the slipstream there as if they're fighting over the last chicken McNuggets. But as they make their way down towards the braking zone, well, right now Matthew Hunter's back on the inside and Gianluca Rospo on the outside, and it's going to be on the brakes of Hunter. He went very late there, of course, in qualifying. We rode on board, but no such issue this time as Jordan Butler gives up the places. I suspect he's got a slowdown there for one of the chicanes. He's having to burn it at the last resort. So if he does so, it's going to be a change of place. Matthew Hunter now up into 7th place in the club class. We've still got a way to go as Kessler Brotner and Christopher Bates side by side. And right now, can we expect to see the Danish driver in his Ford Mustang outpower the Ferrari Christopher Bates? Remembering the pro driver, of course, only did the qualifying session. He's got a lot of damage on the front of that car, in fact. Actually, no, he hasn't. That was the camera angle there. And my eyesight, I really do need to go to Specsavers, a glasses company in the United Kingdom. And right now, the 128 driver makes his way down to the braking zone there for Arnage. But as he does so, keeping Bates behind, his next target will be Nathan Anstis in 29th. So he's got 4 places to close down in order to be able to go on the attack with Nathan Anstis. 13th place in the pro should he make it. But meanwhile, we come all the way back towards the front of the field because here's Adam Watson right now, find himself with some friends playing chase behind him. That's Hayden Young there, and also Max Wheeler, the interleaders, glued to the back of the pair of them. And right now for Adam Watson, trying to keep it together as much as possible. 2 seconds of the gap to Timo Gertner, as our top 3 have now broken away from each other. Mikey Stewart is your leader, it should be pointed out, ahead of Philip Hammer. And Timo Gertner running in 3rd at the moment. And in fact, Tim Probert pulling himself out of the sequence. And Mikey Stewart's moved into lead, and we're trying to run away as quickly as he can. The fastest lap now in the hands of Philip Hammer, a 3-minute 54.089. So Hammer definitely getting the move on. We see Adam Watson coming across the line there, 3-minute 58.128. Well, not quite the lap he wanted. I suspect that lap has been full of fighting. We'll get a replay of that a bit more shortly. Meanwhile, Max Wheeler stays transfixed to the back of this group with Eric Gebhardt trying to follow him. And Ashley Brooks a bit further back. Brooks still bringing Jack Wyborn to the party, although Wesley Van Rens has been expelled from this group and therefore has fallen down to none other than 30th place. So Brooks under a lot of pressure as Wyborn rides his rear. The battle of the 2 McLarens here in the interclass. Wyborn right now hoping that perhaps he might be able to just simply put the pressure on Brooks, get him to go into a mistake, alternatively draft him as much as possible. We do apologise there for the intermittent connection of Jack Wyborn's car. A bit of discontinuity there, but you do get the picture as he makes his way onto the Mulsanne, out to Tetra Rouge there, and just staying with Brooks at this time. Brooks trying to do everything he can to run away, if not, pull this group onto the back of Eric Gebhardt, which has put a bit of time between them. Daniel Kovac, Gebhardt's teammate, would ideally like to be pulled up there. Would like to work with his teammate to see if DRX Esports can land one of their best results of the season. Indeed, they've been building some momentum. Meanwhile, just behind, we do see Troy Anderson. Well, he's battling side by side with Harvey Wheeler, the man who started the pole, got it all wrong into the Dunlop chicane. And the Averso rapid driver right now, definitely trying to make amends here as he takes 8th place in pro. Anderson wasn't going to put up too much of a fight there. I think Troy's got his smart thinking cap on, which is now I need to work with the man who's technically the fastest over a single lap in order to be able to make up the lap time and get into the higher place fights. But further down the order, we do see there we have Nathan Anstis battling with Tiago Reza and Darren Sharples. Now, of course, Darren Sharp was previously a racer for Team UKSimRacing and now racing for old dudes in cars. Well, and this versus Reza and Sharples here. They're all jostling. Darren Sharples goes one side of the road, then the other. And Nathan Anstis right now putting your feet to himself. Darren, why are you blocking me? Focus on defending against Reza. But Reza this time is going to try and look around the outside. I think Sharples is perhaps hoping that Anstis will give him a small little bump draft, but if anything, Anstis backs off there, lifts off. We'll see him move around the outside with Thiago Reza just like that. Moving moves his way back into 12th place in the Interclass, at least for now. This will be the back and forth tussle. Meanwhile, a similar coloured car, but not part of the same team. Gianluca Rospo following Adam Lynch, still ahead of Jordan Butler as they fight for 7th place in the club class. Adam Lynch, of course, the man who started the pole in the Interclass, still having to recover his way back up through the field in this race after the difficulties that did occur. But back to the very front we go, and Mikey Stewart right now has Philip Hammer for close company. We were wondering how long it would take before Philip Hammer would perhaps get back into the draft zone, and the answer is it only took half a lap, it would seem, as they come up through. And Hammer definitely right now trying to put personal best after personal best, and also going for purple sectors here. So I think Hammer would like to take the lead this race if he can. I wonder if he feels as though he could potentially take this race over from Mikey Stewart and just simply run away with it. Well, we'll have to see if that's going to be the way it's going to be. And well, again, Mikey Stewart really finding himself right towards the front of the field in a pro class that he's been promoted into as a result of being the runner-up in the Interclass from season 18. He finished second to Hayden Young right at the end of the course. The championship momentum swung in the season finale in the favour of Young, but right now for Mikey, as much as he set his expectations this season being to try and finish inside the top 10 in the pro class, the fact he's third in the championship coming into this round and currently leading the race and contested it versus the championship leader Philip Hammer, I think he will definitely be surpassing his expectations and then some. We do look back for the rear of the 169 for Axis Sport Sim coach, but Hammer's actually putting the pressure on, also respecting the fact there it's a long race and therefore he's just got to make sure he doesn't push too hard too soon. He's just got to keep the pressure on Mikey Stewart to see if he can go to 169 Britain into that error that may open up the way. If not, he can always choose the fuel save, and that always gives him another strategic edge towards the very end. But as they make the way out, well, Stewart then makes an error coming out of the forward chicane, and just like that, he's going to get some time back. He does so, and Philip Hammer takes the lead. And literally, as we were saying, all he needs to do is put some pressure on, and that pressure manifests itself. But now, for Mikey Stewart, the game is on, because he needs to glue himself to the back of Philip Hammer and not let go if he wants to stay in this race for the win. As meanwhile, we see two wide here. Harvey Wheeler versus Eric Gebhard. And now Harvey tries to make his way up into 6th in Pro, and he will be at the head of a long line of Pro drivers, as he now has Gebhard, Kovac, Anderson and Damon and Boyd behind him. Miller Boyd, of course, in the Ferrari that did not want to point at a straight line coming out of Indianapolis on the open lap, and he did find a way to get it point straight to the end, and he's at the back of this group, 11th of the Pro drivers, as this race does find itself calming down just that little bit. However, we must talk about this man, Michael Schütze-Kedo, for pole promotion with ASR, trying to fight his way past Jack Wyborn, or is it Jack Wyborn fighting his way past? The answer is it's Wyborn who makes the move. And the importance of this is the fact that Schütze-Kedo right now down in 12th place in the Pro class, having qualified 13th in the class and 22nd overall. He's not had a happy day here so far, and I think the dream of making it 3 1-2s in a row for pole promotion with ASR, with him being the second place finish in both of those previous sequences, it may have been a burst a little bit, maybe turn into a bit of a nightmare. Jack Barker now makes his way on past, and the Aston Martin driver here find a lot of speed in the draft, having a good run at Tetra Rouge as well, and made racing Aston Martin driver, who of course had an absolute disaster day at the Hockenheimring after that contact with Casper Brotner early on the race. Right now, he does seem as though the Britain is in a much happier place today. As he runs 7th in the Interclass, trying to chase down Jack Wyborn, and with it catch up to the likes of Pete Holt, Peacock and Wesley Van Brent. As he heads down the road, we look to Matthew Hunter, 2 wide here with Daniel Payes. They fight over 9th in the class at the moment, so Hunter has fallen back a little bit compared to his progress earlier on. I suspect there's been an error somewhere, perhaps a slowdown he's had to take, and Tim Prowett tries to go around the outside there, and in the end Tim backs off, knowing that Matthew was never going to give him quite that space, around the Sim class and race the team drive, definitely making sure to show to some drivers that he needs to get his elbows out because he wants to stay with Payes and not lose the right to battle with a fellow club class compatriots. But as they head down the second part of Mulsanne, we definitely owe you a few replays, ladies and gentlemen, from the race start. And well, that first replay will be coming up very shortly, and it will be taking a look back at the drama that happened at the Dunlop chicane right at the start of the race. Easy to see that Tim Prowett looking once, but Matthew Hunter again saying to him, no, stay behind me, please do not pass me. But up the front, Philip Hammer leads Mikey Stewart following, and it's a 4-second gap, and you'll see them coming down the corner shortly. There they are. That is Timo Gertner with Adam Watson on his back, and then we have Hayden Young and Max Wheeler together. But the interleader right now definitely growing the gap versus the rest of the Interclass. Ashley Brooks now is your second place man, and he is on the back of Harvey Wheeler. Eric Gebhard trying to stay with them for as long as humanly possible. With that, ladies and gentlemen, let's pause time and go back in time and take a look at what happened to Harvey Wheeler on the open lap, and indeed so many other open lap and subsequent lap incidents. So we go back to the start, and the man who started on pole took way too much curve there going into the Dunlop curve, and that is what sent him sliding sideways. And well, he was joined then by Luke Sherlock, who had his own moment of madness as he made his way up the hill through the Dunlop corner on the inside there. And well, the 5-9 racing driver in the end taken all the curb. In fact, he was on the curb rather than the racing circuit, and in the end got the car back together, but he had to then try and get it to calm down. He did tame it in towards the runoff area at the Dunlop chicane. Will have picked the slow down for that track limit breach. Then we had this for Peter Holt as well. He was the third driver, SimRacing, who got it wrong. Under braking, oh goodness me, the rear of the car letting go. Did very well there to pull the car to the barrier. Unfortunately, did pick up the damage, and that's why he did see him come into the pit lane. Subsequently, in fact, no, it was not him coming into the pit lane subsequently. That was Tim Probert there, thinking the two different SimRacing drivers. Now, after it went wrong for the trio there, what other driver did we have later on? Well, we did have this for Adam Lynch, of course, later on lap number 1. And this was Lynch going through Tetrarouge to call the curb. And the rear of the McLaren said, no, it's around we go. He said, no, I want it to point straight. The car said, no, you listen to me, Adam. And well, it threw him right into the middle of the road. And indeed, after he had to tussle with the car, had to make sure he held the brakes. And everyone did exceptionally well there to make sure they split the seas around the number 267 driver. And then all started to pull to that inside line. And so Adam was able to go racing again. But then we had this for Cy Anstey, another big name in the Interclass, from the Interleader to while the Inter top 4 drivers came through the first of all chicanes. The rear of the Ferrari just stepped loose there, and unfortunately biff to the tyre barrier, and some front end damage not helping him whatsoever. That explains we picked up the big damage on the front of the car. Also, James Connolly having a bit of difficulty in the start of the race. This was Connolly going to the second of those chicanes. There was a bit of drama for Connolly, and as he made his way out, the club driver, one of the big title challengers, got it all wrong on the exit. Rear of the car let go, and a big hit to the upcut barrier there. A much bigger shunt compared to Cy Anstey's, I can tell you that, and that is not going to buff out very easily either. As we also had this for Harry Tuominen. And this was Tuominen at the time battling with, I think, David Pilcher. Went onto the brakes, the pair of them. And as he did so, slight clip in the rear of Pilcher and contact with Adam Lynch, who came charging into the braking zone. And unfortunately, Cy Anstey had himself in there. That was a menage a trois, a very violent one at that. And unfortunately, I think Harry Tuominen's not going to be too impressed then. Tobias Hunter did very well to slam on the brakes in that situation. And, well, we then had Cy Anstey towed to the pit lane, subsequently due to the damage to the car. But lap number 2 then had a bit of difficulty for Daniel Pays. This was the old Dudes in Cars Ferrari driver coming down the hill, and as he did so, well, made his way through the S's, and that was going to cut the inside there for one of the drivers, and that definitely was perhaps not a move that was on. Now, who was that who made that contact with Daniel Pays? I'll tell you the answer to that one. I want to potentially say that was Stephen Parker Hamilton. Was it? Here we go. And the answer was, I think, we did see Stephen Parker Hamilton there. It was Parker Hamilton, and looked up the inside there, and that's where the contact came between the two of them. But after that, and I think he'll definitely be having a word with the stewards afterwards, well, we did also see some difficulty for Thiago Reza on lap number 2. And this was our Brazilian driver in a free wide for a brief moment. Went to the braking zone. Oh, goodness me. And that was the big hit to the wall, of course. And that was in contact there, I believe, I want to say with Robin Powney, unless I'm mistaken. The McLaren driver in that contact. What did it look like from Powney's perspective? Let's see if we can find out. And this was Powney make his way down towards the braking zone, and as he did, ooh, in the end, a tiny little twitch to the right. Now I wonder whether there was potentially some contact with Tom Wheeler's car to trigger that little twitch, because you can see the steering wheel just suddenly jutted to the right. And what did it look like from another camera angle? Can we get an alternative angle here? Well, Tom Wheeler was far enough away. In fact, now when we get that angle, that actually tells a different story. I think what's happened there is that we saw Thiago Reza come quite significantly over to the left. Powney had gone a tiny bit to the right, and the two on a convergence course. That's going to be a difficult one for the stewards to pick apart. Something tells me that may end up being a racing incident, given the way the two cars were on that collision course in the end. But everyone did very well not to be collected in the chaos that unfolded afterwards. And then sadly, on lap number 3, we had this for Jack Wyborn in a race that has gone from good to difficult, and difficulty being the two wide there, and that was with Harvey Wheeler, I believe. A contact between the two going to the Porsche curves, and that explains why Wheeler then was propelled backwards to the likes of what's the DRX eSport machine behind him, and also there, I do believe, Troy Anderson for Wild World Motorsports, and Jack Wyborn getting it back together, but not without losing some critical places. So understanding he won't be too happy about that. And And sadly, we did have this for Dean Collins. This was Collins only moments ago, making his way in towards Molzan. And a car coming very abruptly into the brain zone behind him. That was the 399 that said hello. A bit of a rude hello, if I do say so. And that was Tim Parker Hamilton tapping the rear of Dean Collins. Remember, Collins has a drive-through penalty to serve at some point in the race, and that's propelled him all the way down the order. And for Dean, you've got to feel for him. He will not be too pleased. But back to live racing we go. And as we do, we've still got an hour and 15 minutes or so to go, but one of the big questions we do have, as Michael Schützer cared about, continues to chase after Jack Barker, is what exactly happened to Tim Probert at the start? Can we find out whether he picked up a black flag of some description? And the answer seems to be with regards to penalties, as we find out. Well, we haven't quite got that bone. Bear with us. I'm trying to find a bit of information on Tim's race, and we're going to keep investigating that as we do look to Peter Holt. Meanwhile, well, he finds himself under a bit of pressure from Pete Cox. The battle of the two Peters here. Albeit, is it the one with an R or the one without who's going to be victorious today? Fight over third currently. Fourth place, I should say, in the Interclass. Now they just in respect to the world. And both drivers are still very much locked in together, enjoying an absolutely brilliant battle. But with regards to Tim Probert, we can now fill you in with regards to what happened. And he just decided to come into the pit lane. There's nothing more than that. So a strategic call there from Tim Probert. Now, interesting with that, because it has dropped him a long way down the order, but is there some method in the madness by pitting so early? We will definitely have to see as the lap time continues to tumble, and now it is going to be none other than where's the machinery of Adam Watson that sets the fastest lap of the race for a brief moment, and then Harvey Wheeler goes even quicker by comparison. So all these drivers right now continue to turn up the pace as much as humanly possible. And indeed, it is fascinating to see how it goes on. But only months ago, we did have Pete Holt and Pete Cox swap their places around. And here's a quick replay of how that happened. So this was in the run. We're down towards Bolzan, and this is why we did see was Holt ahead in the end. Onto the brakes they went. Making that move there straightforward. A cone being definitely falling victim as a result of that overtake. And well, just like that, Pete Holt moving up into that fourth place. And Cox tried to come back, but played for a strategic card, which was to just stay behind and follow instead. We head back to your live racing. So we continue the story, and as we do, Adam Watson right now will give him the pace he's trying to show, and the same for Harvey Wheeler, who's not quite on the back of this group right now, but would like to be there. Well, I think both drivers have got other plans. They want to be on that podium, they want to be on the very top of it, but it's going to come at the cost of some significant fuel usage to do so. We have also just had happen off camera. There's been a change of position there. Hayden Young and Timo Gertner swapping the places back around again. These two right now, constantly back and forth between them. Max Wheeler pulls out the double draft there. Now, is this simply to just bleed at some of the speed, or is it potentially to try and make some way into the Pro Pack? I'd say it's the former rather than the latter. He simply just pulled himself out of the draft there because he's got such an overspeed. He can afford to lose it, and we'll be happy with that. Troy Anderson, meanwhile, fighting here with Daniel Kovac. 2-1 they go. Anderson on the inside onto the brakes. Swap that place there. Daniel Kovac and Jeffrey Damon now queue up behind. The Wild Ride Motorsports drivers definitely now starting to get closer together to each other. Jeffrey Damon just behind, and I think now starts to have plans to work together. As Damon makes his way down, of course, he has to be cognizant of the fact that Miller Boyd's with him, but the Dutchman right now, finding Boyd being a little bit passive and just simply wanting to work with him. As Daniel Kovac tries to power his way back past. He's on the left of the two cars in front of here as we continue to sit on board with Jeffrey Damon going into the brains over the second of the Mulsanne chicanes. Miller Boyd stays behind there. Oh, a bit of a touch there between Anderson and Kovac. And well, in the end, they both split as much as they possibly can, give each other space. They come back on now, and well, it's definitely a tussle here. You could say it's a bit of a lover's quarrel between the two of them. But as they come down towards Mulsanne, no love lost between them. And I think right now, Troy Anderson's giving on the radio to Jeffrey Damon saying, Jeffrey, back me up, will you? As they come down. And well, this may escalate just a little bit more. But here comes Anderson looking to the inside versus Kovac. Does he go for the move? He does. Damon looks around the outside. That's not going to work. Troy Anderson takes all the curve at turn 14. And in the end, decided to be a bit liberal with those track limits. He'll get away with it this time. As we see Daniel Kovac then goes a little bit deep. But right now, they are battling more than they're thinking about working together here. And I think the two pro drivers, if they look at the bigger picture, they're losing time now to Eric Gebhardt, who's 2 seconds up the road. But Daniel Kovac in particular will be a bit upset that he's losing the time of his teammate. As Troy Anderson tries to gradually power his way past. It's Corvette. We know there is a little bit top end limited on the balance of performance if they're all running similar rear wing and gear stack settings. So therefore, the Ferrari will try to go back ahead, but Anderson being the braver on the brakes and that inside into Indianapolis, and he will steal the place away. Daniel Kovac does slip back to 9th in pro, and then we have Jeffrey Damon and Miller Boyd still following suit here into that braking zone. But the Senate Racing Bulls drive right now glued to the back of Jeffrey Damon. definitely wants to try and find a way in if he can. Not proving easy whatsoever. As hold up a second. That's Indianapolis, and that's Stephen Parker Hamilton. He's gone straight on into the tyre barrier there for MRC Insurance Team. Drama there for the 399 Britain. And right now, as he brings it back on the road, this race going from good to bad to backwards for him. And not a happy moment there. 4th place down the club class. Was running second earlier on, based on where he qualified. And Crystal Bates and Ryan Clark now will be looking at them and thinking, is this their opportunity to try and get involved as well? Now, credit where it's due to both Bates and Clark. They've both very gradually been making about the order, and the Spectre Racing SimWorks UK driver has made the most ground out of the pair, going from 9th to 6th so far, and working very tactically, it would seem. I think Clark realising that Bates is just as quick as him, so therefore why fight when he can just simply stay behind and be pulled along as others make mistakes, and indeed time is lost by many another driver. As they continue to make the way in towards the Porsche curves. Just behind them, you'll see Tim Probert, the man who pitted at the end of lap number 1. It was a very short pit stop, only 5.5 seconds, so whatever it was for, well, if it was for some repair work there, I think there was also a tiny top-up of the fuel tank, perhaps. And, well, it's the 112 driver here on a bit of strategic masterclass that we do not know about. No penalty, however, that's one thing we can confirm. We've looked through the logs as he makes his way in towards the forward chicanes. Tim Probert here definitely on a bit of an unconventional strategy as Stephen Parker Hamilton comes into the pit lane, and that is going to be for repair work. That's the only justification for this after a huge hunt at the Indianapolis barrier, and here's a replay to explain what exactly went wrong. So it's making his way down to the braking zone, and as he did so, I think he was tapped there on the rear, and if so, that would have been contact from Robin Pownier, who sent him onwards and straight to the barrier. This is what it looked like from Pownier's perspective as we jump aboard, listen in. And you can hear that crunch there, bumper on bumper. And unfortunately, at that point, Stephen Parker Hamilton being just a passenger in his car and sent straight to the barrier. No malice meant from Robin Pownier, but definitely a misjudgment under braking. And that will be, I think, the verdict there in the steward's room. But we come back to your live racing, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, so we do. And as we do, Stephen Parker Hamilton makes way down pit road, and we'll leave him there for now as the repair work goes to the car, and we'll have to see what he can do strategically to salvage something out of this rather than being forced to make an extra pit stop later on in the day. And right now, Daniel Kovac here finding himself under pressure from Jeffrey Dames. Troy Anderson's already cleared off, and now Jeffrey David says, Troy, wait for me. And Daniel Kovac right now, I don't think wants to play the game, and just simply lets the Wild Ride Motorsports machines go. But Jeffrey David's got other ideas here as he tries to power his way on past. And down towards the first of Moles End chicanes. Well, a bit of door road between the two. Jeffrey David wants a bit more real estate on the road here. But Kovac not going to make it easy for him. And David in the end being made to take a very tight line on entry. That's definitely going to hurt his brakes, hurt his tyres a bit more. Kovac playing the game, which is if you want to pass me, you're going to have to expel something. You're going to have to waste some tyre life to do so, or waste some fuel. He's not just going to simply roll out the way here. And balls of the field to fragment a little bit, but it's all part of the game. Trying to make sure he picks up some valuable points and also splits Wild Ride Motorsports drivers from picking up some valuable team points potentially. As Miller Boyd just watches on behind, and just from them, Wesley Van Ren's now only 1.1 seconds behind, and he's third ahead of Peter Holt. You can see them there in the rear of the picture, with Van Ren still being allowed to take the third place, but Peter Holt stayed quite passively behind in fourth. Jeffrey Damon there on the back of Kovac for a third time now. Really, you don't want to be the leader in such a slipstream train until you make your way down towards Indianapolis. Until then, it's all just about positioning and being very patient. And it's only at the very end, as you get ready to break into Indianapolis or turn into it, that you want to be the one who's at the head of the field. Otherwise, you always risk just losing out, or alternatively, burning some fuel when you don't really need to. And Jeffrey Damon trying to go around the outside this time. Two wide they enter the corner. Two wide they're going to exit here. These two absolutely brilliant. You'd think they've rehearsed this with the amount they're battling back and forth. Great respect being shown between the two. And right now, Kovac and Dave are definitely not thinking about the toe of Troy Anderson in front. They're just thinking about one thing, which is, I want to be ahead of the other guy. Speaking of which, Max Wheeler here trying to power his way past Hayden Young in towards Indianapolis and bring with him Harvey Wheeler as well. So Harvey Wheeler does come through and Hayden Young backs off there. But what about Damon versus Kovac and Boyd trying to get involved here? Miller Boyd does back off. And we're going to be too wide in towards Indianapolis. Keep it clean, gents. That's what you love to see. Jeffrey Day on the inside. And in the end, Daniel Kovac tries to run it high on the curb. He does so. They're still going to be too wide here coming in towards Arnage. It's not over yet. Daniel Kovac goes all the way on the inside. And the Durex Esport driver is not done with this. Good greatness me. What a brilliant battle between them. And right now, Miller Boyd's queued up behind Wesley Van Rens and Peter Holt have been brought in. And Jack Wyborn, he's not too far away, nor is Peter Cox at this point. So understand me here, we're really building up a long line of cars that will tally itself back from 11th all the way theoretically soon to 20th place. And if so, Michael Schutzer-Kehrback will be there. But Kovacs right now still going a bit defensive, but now David trying to go around the outside to the inside here for the Porsche curves, and he'll do so there. Kovacs won't have a response to this as we ride back and forth with the 142 Hungarian driver. As they roll off the brakes here, you see just a dab of the brakes going on. In fact, it was. Now Jeffrey Damon to reapply his brakes. They're carrying too much speed and risking understeering and compromising his line. And now back on board here with your Durex Esport machine again, up towards what will be the four chicanes. Well, Kovacs, I don't think he's going to have the opportunity to make a move this time. He's just going to have to watch and wait and listen for the next opportunity if he can. Further back, we were saying only moments ago about Michael Schutzer-Kehrback. There he is with Jack Barker behind him. He's just past Jack Barker, going in towards the Porsche curves as we understand it. And the pole position of ASR driver continues to make his way gradually forward at the expense, of course, of other pro drivers seemingly getting it wrong. But Schutzer-Kehrback's still got a long way to go. His next target will be Miller Boyd. Boyd right now, the best part of 7 seconds up the road. But to show you those class standings for the first time today, as we come towards the end of the opening 25 minutes of this race, well, Philip Hammer still leading at the moment as he makes his way onto the Mulsanne. He is dropping Mikey Stewart little by little. Mikey Stewart has just set a few personal best sectors, but not a personal best lap, with Hammer setting a personal best of 3 minute 52.94. You can see what Hammer's trying to do here. He's trying to absolutely go full attack, particularly through the final third of the lap, which is about technical ability and also the setup of the car for his corners rather than straights. In the meantime, Mikey Stewart's still on the tyre at the moment, a very distant slipstream, but the Ferrari driver knowing that if that gap gets to 2 seconds plus, suddenly the effects of the slipstream will become absolutely negligible, and at that point, he will be at his own steam, and we'll have to see whether Adam Watson potentially finds his way from third into second, because there he is, 5 seconds behind, and right now throwing everything at this to try and close down the gap to Mikey Stewart and drop Harvey Wheeler, although saying that Harvey Wheeler, after being helped past by Max Wheeler in terms of passing Hayden Young, since then, Hayden's got back ahead of Max Wheeler, but Harvey right now has completely got out of dodge with regards to this, as he absolutely charges onwards, and we know he was your pole sitter. We believe there might have been some slipstream involved at that, but the youngster right now, he, regardless of how the race has started and how compromised his tyres were, that big sideways slide through Dunlop curve in towards the Dunlop chicane, where has not stopped him from really pushing on here, and wanted to see if he can have an opportunity to try and make it a second win of the season. Come back there to Daniel Kovacs, still chased after Jeffrey David. Now Miller Boyd, Wesley Van Rens, Pete Holt, Jack Wyburn, they are all there. Oh, so you see a little bit further back, Pete Holt's rushed to the back of this group. Definitely has been quite the back and forth exchange here, but all these drivers right now having to make decisions on the fly. Do I fuel safe? Do I lift and coast? Do I simply stay behind? Do I pull out and burn off the toe instead? Or do I go for a move, knowing that right now that move may not be valuable at this time? Well, there we can see a move being potentially made by the yellow machine of Wesley Van Rens, and the W Lewis Homewood Racing Revolution 3 racing car making a move there on Peter Holt. We'll take that place back for third in the interclass for a brief moment, as Holt definitely trying to now bear his fangs a little bit more. Jordan Maymar for SimCast Racing UK with Altitude 3M Esports. He's at the back of Casper Brockner, although Brockner has recently made the move there, so Brockner up into 24th place now. Jordan Maymar, I think he's just going to play the game of being Lions. But I'll tell you one thing, whilst we covered Max Wheeler and also Wesley Van Rens, Pete Holt, one job I think covering the interclass on recapping those of the field. Ashley Brooks, currently the second place man in Inter. He is the best part of 6 seconds behind Max Wheeler. Doesn't quite have the pace, but to be fair, also not being helped by the absence of a car in front to give him a draft, whereas Max Wheeler has Hayden Young for company. So therefore, Ashley Brooks tends to do everything on his own power. It's not helping him out that way. It's only costing more time with regards to fuel usage as well in the pit lane. So Troy Anderson is gradually closing. What he hoped Troy Anderson might want to overtake and work with him to bring themselves back onto the back of Timo Gertner and Max Wheeler, their closest rivals respectively. But if that's how the top 3 in Inter stands, what about in the club class? One driver we have not talked about since the start of the race is the Team Lewis Sprite-powered machine there, and I wonder if he's a fan of Sprite or whether he's just running that for sponsor reasons. But either way, the 323 driver here definitely making a big fizz and a buzz. Because Ryan Abbott's right now leading the class of club by 5.5 seconds, as he's followed by Jack Barker. And this is the man who follows him in the club trail, and that is Tom Wheeler in his Ford Mustang for Verso Rapid, who haven't started in third place, made his way to second at the expense of Stephen Parker Hamilton's demise, and also that of James Conley. And meanwhile, Jordan Maymar a further 5.5 seconds behind. Here he is, and the supercars for Altitude 3M Esports driver is a little bit faster than Tom Wheeler from lap to lap at the moment, so still trying to close that gap. But as soon as I say that, we're potentially into pit stop season here. As we show you the overall standings, into the pit comes Wesley Van Rens and also Peter Holt. So both into the pit lane. both deciding they want to essentially split this race at the half-hour mark rather than essentially try to go as long as possible the fuel tank, unless that's as long as it could go. Are we potentially looking at the risk of a free stop here today? Well, surely if you can go half an hour or so into the race, then you're looking at a two-stop, two half-an-hour stints, and a final half-an-hour stint should gradually break the race up very nicely. We'll have to see if that's the way it is going to go in reality or not. Jordan Butler carries on, bringing with him Gianluca Rospo to the party. Rospo still staying very close. Leaving the pit lane, we'll see very shortly. Pete Holt and Wesley Van Rens, they're still on the pit limiters at the moment, heading towards the pit exit line. And Pete Holt has jumped back ahead of Wesley Van Rens in the pits, with Van Rens' pit stop being a whole second longer by comparison. Jordan Butler, they're going very wide coming out of the Dunlop chicane. As he does so, still following Luke Charlotte there, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's potentially given an off-track instant point. It won't risk a slowdown. But as Dean Collins finds himself now being the filler in a sandwich of two drivers who have pitted, Pete Holt and Wesley Van Rens there will surround him. This is not ideal for Van Rens. He'll want to get clear of Dean Collins as quickly as he can, because Collins has yet to pit. So therefore, you would imagine that he's in a bit of a different race right now, although Dean will be aware of that as well. And when he thinks to himself, do I really want to be in amongst my two fellow Inter drivers who strategically, unless Collins of course might be thinking about going for a potential one stop, although I think that is going to be really pushing it given the fact the amount of fuel usage here, this lap being so long full throttle. Collins right now had to see whether he decides to be a bit of a nuisance to Holt and Van Rens, and when that's all for the cause of potentially helping out himself and his team in the interclass for picking up some valuable points and costing Holt and Van Rens some valuable points instead. Well, the guess is as good as mine at the moment. As Christopher Bates is into the pit lane as well, out of my contact roof window, and that is in for a strategic stop. So more and more pit stops are seemingly being triggered. Those who can go longer are definitely doing so, as Jeffrey Damon still has Daniel Kovac and Miller Boyd behind, and this is why the big fights in the Pro Class, this being for 8th for cars, as we do take a brief sip of water. And this race so far, over the opening 30 minutes has had plenty of excitement and drama on the opening 5 laps. Things have calmed down a little bit now compared to how they were, albeit I think it has also been the fault now that a lot of teams will be standing on the wall to their drivers. Think about the strategy, stop thinking about battling each other, although Jeffrey Damon and Daniel Kovac definitely didn't get the memo on that one, because here comes Kovac looking around the outside into Indianapolis, and he'll get it stopped there on the brakes very nicely. The 3 Ferrari drivers together, and Jeffrey Damon falls back a little bit, but Kovac goes deep, goes wide, puts himself on the inside of an arch. On the brakes they both go, and at the end, it's going to be Kovac who gets back ahead as Miller Boyd now brings him right back into the mix. We're right on board here, and I want to tell you one thing, that was so close to the point. I thought he was inside the rear of the Ferrari in front of him, but not quite so. I don't think you can get any closer than that, as Boyd right now picking up the double toe. I think he's going to give a tiny little bump draft there if he can to the back of Jeffrey Damon, just help him back along, or back it off here before the braking and turning point for the Porsche curve. So Miller Boyd definitely playing the game of promoting antagonist here as he makes his way through the Porsche curves for what will be for him the 8th time of asking this race, winding his way between those apexes and just keeping a very smooth line at the moment for Send It Racing Bulls. Very difficult, of course, to do so, even in clear air, getting these corners right. But in the double dirty air he's got, well, understand, he's not running as much downforce as they typically would at other circuits, so you've got less downforce that is taken away from the car, but it's the front end downforce that's affected. It's going to be Damon up the inside there. Goes ill within the brakes. My goodness, that wasn't part of the script. Jeffrey, you're a madman. But he very pulled it off. And Daniel Kovac in the end, I think he sort of looked at it. Wait, hold up a second. No way is he going for that. And well, that did require Kovac to leave the steering slightly open there. But Jeffrey Damon right now enjoyed himself as Kovac decides to pull the way over to the inside to cover off the Dunlop curve. And I think he's saying to Miller Boyd, don't you dare try and do it. And right now, Daniel Kovac, he's having so much fun out there. Whether he's actually enjoyed himself or not is another question. But Jeffrey Damon, well, he's enjoyed himself, no doubt about it. These three are having 3 very different styles of race. Miller Boyd's pretty much just sat there right now after his, what was heroics, should we say, in grabbing the car and wrestling it back together. In fact, was he racing the Ferrari at that point, or was he having to tame a horse, giving the prancing pony on the front of the car? Well, either way, Miller Boyd definitely having a car that wanted to wrestle its way away from him, whereas Daniel Kovac is definitely trying to play strategist, but right now, meanwhile, Jeffrey David's playing the game of, I want to get ahead and get away. I've got a teammate to try and catch up to. Well, I'll be the way that these three are playing the game. As Troy Anderson's fallen a bit further back, and how did that happen to Troy Anderson? That was on lap number 8. In fact, we did not catch what's happened to Troy, and here's a quick replay to explain, ladies and gentlemen. So this was Anderson making his way into the first part of Mulsanne. I think we're looking elsewhere in the field at the time. And, well, he lost it on the exit of the chicane there. The rear of the car just let go. We saw that for a number of drivers in the open. That includes Cy Anthony. And now Troy Anderson has added his signature, or his front bumper paint, to the tyre barrier there on the exit. And managed to get it turned around eventually after 2 attempts. But with that, we go back to your live racing. So Anderson, who was just up the road from Jeffrey Damon, I think that's what Damon was trying to chase after. Well, now for Troy, it's all about doing the work once again. As we do see there, Michael Schütze-Kerouac squeezes his way ahead of Pete Cox. So now up into 13th place there overall as the pro driver, but taking let me try that again. Taking a very liberal set of track limits there, or liberalities, I believe is the word, or something along those lines. Indeed, I have thrown my lexicon out the window today, ladies and gentlemen. You'll have to forgive me. The German driver right now for pole position with ASR, steadily making his way up the order. I'm saying taking liberties. There we go, not liberalties. And, well, I finally found the word I was looking for. It was somewhere on the table in front of me. I just had to pick it up and put it all back together. Schütze-Kerouac now into what is a long run of pro cars. He's got to close the 4.5 second gap to Miller Boyd, where the fact that Boyd, Damon and Kovac fight each other so furiously, I have no doubt he will eventually catch up to them. As here they go, and Miller Boyd now tucking in behind Kovac and saying to Daniel, come on Daniel, we can go forward here, let's get you past Jeffrey Damon. He's been a bit of a nuisance, he's costing us all time. Right now let's go on to the brakes there. So Kovac is allowed to move forward, or is Miller Boyd here going to play his own Jeffrey Damon style role, which is help antagonise one driver and now try and find his way past the other? Well, your guess is as good as mine as we look back from the rear of the 142. And here they go up towards Indianapolis. To be fair, whilst we are saying about drivers antagonising each other, let's be very clear here. This is absolutely fantastic racing as the camera is removed from the rear of Kovac's car. And, well, Miller Boyd's definitely going to be called into the stewards room after he's going to pay for that the rear view camera that has now been removed as a result of the bump draft there. And, well, as they make their way through Indianapolis corner, Kovac being allowed to stay ahead. So I think Boyd is playing the game, which is, come on guys, we're losing time. Eric Gebhardt is 3 seconds up the road for us. We do not need to be fighting like this. This is not the end of the race. This is still in the open half of the race. Now, whether Jeffrey David's going to listen to that or not, well, it's up to him at the end of the day. But either way, they're giving us an absolutely brilliant race. And respect where it's due, all 3 pro drivers here, as much as they've got 3 very different agendas of how they want this race to play out, and then they're all somehow making those agendas align to a degree. But let's come back to a man who definitely had a different start to the race, starting from the very back of the field. It's excellent slows, Harry Tuameden, the flying Finn, on the back of Wesley Van Rens, who is currently 7th in the club cars. There have been a couple of pit stops for some of his peers, including Stephen Parker Hamilton, who had that repair work on lap number 5, and also James Connie, who came in on the open lap. But right now, Tuameden trying to move forward with Van Rens, somebody who has pitted. So therefore, Tuameden's game plan here is just to simply stay behind and see if he can work with Van Rens to be able to gain some time. As Van Rens doesn't go a little bit defensive there into Indianapolis, I think that's a bit of a misunderstanding of what's going on. But meanwhile, what's going on in the pit lane is we've got all the leaders coming in. So the fuel tanks at the end have gone in 25 minutes or so, and well, I think that really fills you in as to what strategy we're looking at today. This is definitely a 2-stop race. If you can get that fuel tank to go 30 to 35 minutes, you will be able to cut up this race quite equally. And we'll say all coming in. Pete Cox, meanwhile, is he going another lap? He is. So Pete Cox is going to lead a lap of the race here over on the Interclass, the first so fast driver, and well, absolutely going proudly, is he not? As he makes way through turns 1 and 2 in towards the Dunlop chicane he goes. I don't think this is going to see him potentially take the overall win today, but right now he's been able to save more fuel than anybody else, and Tim Probert carries on. However, he has already taken a pit stop. He took that pit stop on the opening lap, and we put in only a short amount of fuel. It would have only been 1 lap's worth of fuel, but the Sendit Racing driver carries on. But as Philip Hammond leaves the pit lane, what's the gap between him and Mikey Stewart now? The gap, despite the fact he took a 1 second longer static stop, that gap is going to stand tall at the best part of 4.5 seconds with Harvey Wheeler. He's closed up a little bit more there versus Mikey Stewart, and well, absolutely identical pit stop times, Harvey Wheeler and Hayden Young. The only problem is that Hayden Young is a bit too far away to be able to capitalise on that, because he is 6 seconds drift from Harvey Wheeler, with Timo Goethe and Max Wheeler behind. But as all these pit stops play out, and there we can see Miller Boyd is ahead of Daniel Kovac. So Boyd has been saving all the fuel, whilst Kovac and Jeffrey Damon have been squabbling, and Damon has been dropped by the pair of them. Now into the clutches of Wesley Van Rens, who pitted on lap number 7. So Van Rens with a shorter pit stop and an undercut attempt here. Is Wesley Van Rens trying to get a short stop done early to promote himself up the order, and perhaps, I think I can see what the full process is for Wesley Van Rens. If he can have that stop earlier on, and we are expecting, of course, it will be a shorter final stint then, given we've done 35 minutes for our leaders before the first pit stop, and another 35 minutes on into the 90 minutes approximately. You do the maths there, you are looking at about what will be 20 minutes, perhaps really 15 minutes with the pit length time as well to consider, but then you'd have that final lap. So let's say a 20-minute final stint compared to the 35-minute first and second stint. Wesley Van Rens is doing the shorter stint. Well, he's done the shorter stint already, and now he's doing 2 longer stints, but by catching up to the pro drivers on offset strategy, his thought process is, they'll be quicker than me, I just need to stay in the tow with them, and I may be able to get closer to the likes of Ashley Brooks and Peter Holt, and also I'll be able to clear the likes of Jack Wyborn and Jack Barker. So cutting it a different way as the Dutchman, trying to see whether it is the smart way of doing things or not. But meanwhile, Mikey Stewart and Harvey Wheeler now very much together as they're coming down to the second of the Mulsanne chicanes, and Wheeler here dipping his head down, absolutely flying is the Versa Rapid 133 driver. Again, as we said earlier on, you would expect it given he was the pole sitter, and he lost the lead as a result of that big sideways slide through the Dunlop curve on the open lap right at the start, taking way too much curve for the state of the car, the tyres of the car. And right now, as he gets ready to go down to Mulsanne, staying in the draft there, little by little getting closer and closer. No way in at the moment. Onto the brakes he goes, and has to wait just a little bit longer as he comes out of Mulsanne and out towards Indianapolis. But again, this might also be a little bit of fuel saving be done here. It's all down to what Wheeler thinks is the right thing to do. If he thinks that Mikey Stewart's on good enough pace, he'll probably bump draft him like he does now. If he feels though Mikey Stewart's too slow over a lap, I think there'll be no question that he'll look for a move sooner rather than later. And here he goes, in fact, as he makes round past, powering his way onwards, 2 wide they go, and getting ready then for the braking zone for the very tricky right-hander into left of Indianapolis. And what's it going to be? Harvey Wheeler does scoop ahead, and Mikey Stewart backs out there. I think respect to the fact the reality of the situation is he doesn't want to be trying to hold down a faster driver, but I was going to say he'll slow himself down there by making a mistake like that. Well, Harvey Wheeler goes to the gravel there, and well, Harvey today making mistakes, which anybody can make, to be fair, but 2 in a single day. This is normal for the 133 driver, and I think Le Mans definitely catch you out a little bit. But as we said earlier at the start of the show, this is the circuit that's about outlasting it to victory, not surviving on it. And as we do see the Senate Racing Bulls 269 and driver Peter Holt find himself behind Ashley Brooks. Well, right now, Holt definitely moving his way forward a little bit as the AB designed livery, Axis SimSport with Sim Works machine carries on. Ash Brooks right now definitely, I think, finding that Peter Holt is proving to be a bit of a sneaky customer there, and Eric Gebhard will be following them onwards. But with the 2 into drivers, very close, in fact so close that Peter almost pushing Ashley Brooks through the Porsche curves. Not normal bump draft through a corner, it should be said, and that is literally going to be the tiniest touch of a bump. I'm amazed there that Brooks' rear end didn't let go with that, even the tiniest touch it normally does. But I think there that is literally a brush and nothing more than that, anything more than that. I think we would have seen both cars going around. Well, meanwhile, they make their way onwards, and with Gebhard being queued up behind them, that's brought Boyd, Kovac and Damon back into the mix. As we see Van Rens and shoots Cicada back on the back of them before too long. But into the pits comes Tim Probert, and so does Pete Cox. So both of them, they're going 1 extra lap compared to everybody else. And well, it might be a smart strategic call here for Cox. He'll go for a full fuel tank, as will Probert, and that will bring them right back into the strategic order as Cox leaves the pit lane, a 30.2 second stop. What's it going to be for Tim Probert? We will see shortly as they all come through our drivers. But where does Cox fit back into the picture? The answer is going to be, as he brings himself up to speed off the limiter, he will fit in just ahead of Michael Schütze-Kedeback, I think. And Schütze-Kedeback goes for a move on the brakes. He does. Sipes his way out the inside there. Goes way too deep. The 3 wide for brief moment. Oh! And I think there's a bit of netcode contact for Pete Cox. And Cox was looking so good to be essentially snatched away 5th place in the interclass. But he's got to wait to rejoin there. The Averso Fast Drive will not be too happy about that whatsoever. And I think he'll feel as though he's had contact made to him. But I think that was netcode contact based on that camera angle. We'll come back to that very shortly and get your replay of that. But for Pete Cox, what was an extra lap saved on fuel has now all crumbled down strategy, but he's got to stick to his guns at this point. He may still be able to outsmart a few drivers around him, particularly Tiago Reza, Jack Barker, the 2 drivers closest to him, may be able to make his way towards the tail end of the top 6 in the interclass if it all works out. But he's now got to really get his head down here and not let what's happened phase him. Can we take a look back at what exactly did happen? So this was as the drivers made their way into that braking zone. Now this is the camera angle we originally had. Schütze-Kedeback outbroke himself there, and then coming into the corner. Ooh, that's not the easiest camera angle to be able to discern there. Can we get on board with Schütze-Kedeback? I think we might be able to. And this was under braking, so overcooks it initially, and then comes on through, and as he does so, it's a very hard one to call. Part of me says there might have been a tiny bit of netcode contact. Another part of me wants to say that Cox then may have overcooked the corner a little bit. Can we get the on-board for Pete Cox's car? We may be able to. We need the roll bar. Let's keep an eye on your steering angle there for Pete Cox as he makes his way into the right-hander. Something tells me that's netcode, because what you can see there is he held his steering angle. Now, if the rear of the car had snapped loose, you would expect the driver to potentially jolt the steering a little bit to try and correct the car. Naturally, you would do as a driver, or at least trying to counteract to what's happening to the car. But there, he's holding his steering angle, expecting to make the corner, and Sonny, the rear, just let go. That's going to be a tough one for the Shoulds to take a look at there, but I think that might be a no further action situation, given the circumstances. But with that, we do come back to your live racing. And as we do, we're almost at the halfway point at Le Mans for round number 6 of the championship. And as we can see, Jordan Maymar right now looking to make his way past Cox. But understandably, this is the second place club driver, still trying to make his way up to Ryan Alberts, but Ryan Alberts really has been a revelation so far today. Although it must be said, Maymar's gone from 5th to 2nd in the class. Yes, he's been aided by the difficulties the likes of Parker Hamilton amongst others, but also Maymar has kept his head down and has not given up in this race despite the qualifying session. Perhaps suggests he won't be on the pace for a podium, and we can still chase down Ryan Alberts depending on which way the strategy does go today. Further down the order. Oh, hold up a second. That's not the way you come out of Tetra Rouge. And that's Harry Terminen grinding along the barrier there. In fact, that's before he's even got to Tetra Rouge. So that's gone very wrong there coming out of the S's. Well, that drops him all the way down the order. But what exactly has gone wrong for Harry Terminen if that's going to slide? Because there's Steve G. We haven't really talked about Steve G all day. But now he'll move up into 9th place for an intermittent moment versus Terminen. Will get onto his slipstream and try to stay with him. Albeit, G at least have a bit of breathing room at the moment. And to be fair, he's running very happily inside the top 10 of the club class. And will we see a top 10 for Steve today? He hasn't had a top 10 in some time. Will he be able to make it happen? Indeed, picking home one of his best results of the season so far. He has got a 5-second gap there to David Pilcher, who's a bit further back. The man he has really been in a back and forth conquest with so far today. James Conley is still 10 seconds behind. You can see him there as a brief speck in the rear of the camera shot. And as they make their way onwards, right now, David Pilcher of the Supercars Racing Team, he's definitely had a few bruises, but he's not been broken by it, as then we do see James Conley, the man who's definitely, I think, has had a bit of his racing spirit broken today. He has had to make 2 trips to pit lane, 1 for repair work at the start, and 1 for fuel. And now he is on a free-stop strategy, unfortunately been forced onto it as a result of difficulty. Tobias Huckanson's also going to pit lane quite recently, and that is for his 2nd visit. The man who started for the pit lane picked up some damage earlier on, and now has made his fuel stop. So Hetzel and Slow definitely having a bit of a difficult day today, which will be detrimental to their team's championship progress, and that both drivers in said championship. But what exactly happened to Harry Terminen? Here we go, back in time for a quick look. So this was Terminen being chased there by Matthew Hunter going through the S's. And, well, took a lot of curb there as he made his way out to the 2nd and took a too much exit curb. The car bounced there, bottomed out over the curb, and that explains why the car's propelled to the inside barrier there. So a bit too much speed before he got to Tetra Rouge, and unfortunately the curb biting back against Harry Terminen's McLaren 720S Evo. But with that, we also did have some difficulty for Jack Wyborn simultaneously, and this was Wyborn, I believe, returning to our screens very shortly. He did have a bit of a intermittent connection, and there he was. Well, he was on the grass in the end and then disappeared from it. So for Jack Wyborn, a race that definitely went a bit wrong as we head back to your live pictures. Can't really fill you in on what happened to Jack Wyborn, unfortunately, due to his internet discontinuity, but we know he touched some grass. That's what we definitely do know as we do come back to the live racing. As Ashley Brooks carries on, Pete Holt there with him, and right now running 2nd in the Interclass ahead of the 3rd place man. Well, these two still have Kovac, Gebhard, Boyd and Damon with them, but they have split a little bit. Have the Pro Quartet. They've definitely been at the scene of plenty of back and forth action between them all. And, well, what comes next? Because Eric Gebhard here, still feeding that pressure from Boyd. Although, not a Jeffrey Damon send up the inside there, I can tell you that. And I think Damon right now just getting ready to look for his next move. Meanwhile, somebody's taken a lot of gravel there on the exit. I think that was a brief trip out, potentially for Ashley Brooks. But no foul, no harm. And, well, as they head up towards the timing line, we can see there Daniel Kovac taking a very tight run towards the pit wall there before the Dunlop curve. He's been taking that line a couple of times. Is he trying to break the slipstream? Because if so, well, you'll notice there, as a result of that line, he had a very compromised line going into his Dunlop curve. Took so much curb, in fact. If it wasn't for that, his tyres have got temperature and he's got a lot of fuel in the rear of that Ferrari. I think that would have been going around there. So Kovac right now risking it all. And, well, an interesting moment there for the Hungarian driver, the RXC Sport. Not conventional lines being taken. I think worried about the fact he's gifting the slipstream there to his teammate, which is what he wants to do. But also Miller Boyd and Jeffrey Damon are being pulled back into this. But as we see them make their way down the Molzan, staying together still as we see Harry Tuominen make his way through the Porsche curves meanwhile. And now he's getting closer to the back there of Stevie G's machine. This will be for 9th place in club. And, well, where will he look for the move for it? Will it be going through the Corvette curves? I don't think so, unless DG goes very wide, which he does. That, unfortunately, for the GT3 racing driver, that is going to be a slowdown penalty. He's most likely going to serve for track limits at some point. And Tuominen's going to look to the inside here, and it'll be a classic move at the inside. G's not going to fight that too hard. Lets it go instead. And again, I think playing the game, which is much like the hare and the tortoise, whilst Harry Tuominen can be as quick as the hare, for CEG, he's going to be slow and steady like the tortoise and try and bring home those very valuable points. He heads up towards turn of 1. David Pilcher 6.3 seconds behind, and on retrospect, I don't think G has actually picked up a time penalty for the infringement of the track limits, and I wonder, whereas he did go wide, he actually lifted off the throttle significantly. It will have caused it to understeer a bit deeper, but in turn, because the track limits breaches are typically done based on a rolling 5-lap average, as we understand it, of a driver compared to their previous laps versus the time they potentially gained to that corner, G there was sacrificed so much time, the system, the iRacing automated system, will have gone, well, he hasn't gained any time compared to his rolling lap average, so therefore there's no need to give a time penalty. But meanwhile, Michael Schütze-Kehrbeck definitely having to burn some time there as he lifts off on the exit of what is the run out the second of the Mulsanne chicane. So he falls back behind Ryan Abbott, and Abbott's right now up into 15th place. Abbott's doing a phenomenal job here today. The Team Nubish driver, well, I'll tell you one thing, I don't know what he's had for breakfast this morning, but whatever croissants he has had here in France, well, he's definitely enjoyed them because he's absolutely flying at the moment, and he's had a real turn of pace here today. And right now, still half the race to go, to be fair. It's not over yet. We don't want to put the commentator's curse on him either, but he's looking quite untouchable in the club class, barring his own error. As he carries on, Ryan Clark, meanwhile, still stuck behind another club driver. Although earlier on, he was playing smart and sensible with Christopher Bates. Now he's playing smart and sensible with Matthew Hunter. So Ryan Clark definitely playing a strategic race here, trying to chase after a top 5 potentially in the club class. Although to do so, as we show you the class standings, well, that 5th place is currently in the hands of Gianluca Rospo, and it is 20 seconds up the road. So therefore, I think Clark's going to have to get skates on a little bit. But even so, battling with Matthew Hunter for 7th place, that's not bad. It'll be some good points for both drivers there, whoever gets it. Indeed, these two, I think, getting ready for a bit of a strategic scrap later on. As we ride on board for a brief moment with your BMW M4 Evo driver in the 339, and Ryan Clark now on the grid for what is, I believe, his 3rd season in the UKSimRacing GT3 Championship on Sundays, and will definitely become a bit of a staple of the grid. We'd love to see him out there, and indeed many of these drivers you will have seen for many a season, or indeed sometimes they take a season off and do come back. And right now the Spectre Racing SimWorks UK driver just simply staying with Hunter, and I think feeling as though that Aston Martin is quick enough and Hunter's quick enough behind the wheel of it to pedal it along, and therefore this is all about getting ready for that final pit stop and how much fuel he can save. If he can do a Peter Cox and essentially go one extra lap, that could give him a huge strategic advantage, because what that will mean, essentially he has to spend 1 lap less in the pit lane, although this time Ryan Clark gets a really good run and goes the outside there, almost pulls it off, but in the end goes a bit too deep, too much speed, and in the end Matthew Hunter does take it black. But goodness me, what a lovely attempt there for Ryan Clark, going for it and kept him in the track limits as well, did not make a complete ham sandwich out of it. Indeed, no ham sandwiches so far for several drivers, ladies and gents, for those of you keeping the ham sandwich counter, and we'll have to wait and see what's going to happen a bit later on. But as he does get a bit closer to Matthew Hunter again, I think a move might be on the cards at some point. As Casper Brotner, meanwhile, looking up the inside here. Now, is Brotner being passed potentially? I think he is. And with his bit of traffic jam coming into the breakers over the Dunlop chicane, Jordan Maymar leading Pete Cox, Adamich and Brotner through. Brotner there losing out a little bit. I wonder if he's having to give some time back potentially for track limits at the forward chicanes. And well, Robin Panier and Stephen Parker Hamilton queue on the back of this. As we look to the MRC Endurance Team driver. Now, if you sat there thinking, was Pioneer his teammate? You know, they've just got very similar livery colours on them, to be fair, the MRC Endurance Team, and also worst racing team ever. Now, I'm not going to point fingers and say who came first, etc. That's up to the team. Now, I don't think anybody's play drives one another work. But at the same time, right now, well, the MRC Endurance Team driver may want to get ahead of the similar livery car in terms of its coloration, but you can see WRTE on the rear wing and down the side of the car. So the closer you look, the more you can tell the difference is. But Parker Hamilton here blasted his way past with that overspeed. And, well, they are side by side as they make their way down, because the problem is that as they get towards top end speed now, it's all about who's got the most slipstream. And Parker Hamilton ran at the toe for a brief moment. He's still on the inside of Pioneer. This is overall position, but lifts off there and coasts his way into the trail braking zone for the first of the Mulsanne chicanes. As Casper Brotner goes wide again. And Brotner right now seems to be struggling a little bit in the old duty cars amnesia Ford Mustang. And, well, perhaps it's the situation right now where those tyres are definitely looking a bit worn. And one thing we should point out, that based on our understanding, we have not seen anybody change any tyres in the pit lane. Everyone has just simply taken on fuel. And that is why I think we are seeing a few drivers still struggling just a little bit. As right now your 128 Dane continues to charge his way, but he's fallen to the back of this group. And I wonder if some tyre changes will be done in the second pit stop, if anybody's just going to simply stay out there on their starting set of tyres, which will be well used and worn, but it will save a lot of time in the pit lane, because remember now, fuel and tyres are done separately, and it is 2 to 3 seconds to get the car up on the jacks, and after that it's to be 5 to 7 seconds to change each and every tyre. So you are looking for all 4 tyres in the region of roundabout a maximum 28 second stop. If you change a couple of tyres, you are looking at around 10 to 15 seconds for the tyre change. Meanwhile, as they come into the braking zone here, that will be on the minds of our drivers, worry potentially about what's the right thing to do when it comes to that strategy. Wesley Van Rens, meanwhile, side by side here with Jeffrey Damon, who's definitely now found himself in more of the company of the Inter driver rather than his pro peers. Van Rens running that full place at the Inter glass, but he would like to catch Peter Holt. But Holt right now is a bit too far away. You can see him there just going through the camera shot. Holt is in third of the class and 3.3 seconds ahead. But speaking of Holt and Ashley Brooks, Brooks has now got Daniel Kovac between him and Holt, so Kovac has found his way ahead. Well, that is going to help Brooks out no end, because Holt definitely was sightseeing behind Ashley Brooks for some time, trying to fuel save and really just enjoying the scenes. But meanwhile, one scene we don't want to enjoy, that's the second time now we've seen Stephen Park Hamilton into that barrier at Indianapolis, and this time he's not carried on, it's a tow to pit lane. What's happened to the 399 for MLC Insurance Team? Let's take a look, ladies and gentlemen. I don't think it's pretty. So making his way down towards that braking zone here, he went too wide for Robin Pownier, and as he did so, well, carried way too much speed. The rear of the car let go, hit the barrier, and at that point, he's a passenger. Oh, what a shunt to the barrier. And, well, this is what it looked like on board for him. Hold on to your hats, ladies and gentlemen. And, well, he's carrying the speed, trying to go around the outside, but the car didn't want any of it. The rear let go, and at that point hits the barrier, and well, all you can see is that tyre barrier there, and hopefully all okay, because goodness me, that's a big knock there, even on the simulator, and I can imagine he wanted to get his hands away from the steering wheel very quickly. But back to your live racing we go. And as we do, well, meanwhile, Kovac and Holt together there. And, well, this is really enabling Brooks to pull away right now. And I think Ashley Brooks has made a very decisive call to really get the speed down as they make their way through the Corvette curves and towards the Ford chicanes. Understandably, the Derek Seasport team, Kovac and Gebhard, who hope they can perhaps clear Peter Holt, and in turn, in doing so, bring themselves back together, and then potentially go chasing after higher pro positions. The next one would be Adam Watson, who you see here going up into the Dunlop curve. And he does so, the Supercars for Altitude 3M driver in 6th for the class. His pace at the moment is equal to that of the likes of Timo Gertner, Hayden Young and Mikey Stewart in front. He's not quite on the pace of the top two of Philip Hammer and Harvey Wheeler, who are bolting away and lapping in the 53s. And in fact, saying that, Harvey Wheeler's last lap, a 53.01 to Philip Hammer's 53.86. Something tells me right now, Harvey Wheeler, he's completely thrown the idea of fuel saving out the window. He is absolutely going for this. He wants that win, and he wants to make amends to the Hockenheimring after that non-finish. Added to, of course, was a round missed, and therefore he's really on the back foot at the moment in the Pro Championship to defend it. The showdown rounds will, of course, help bring him back into the fight, because he doesn't lose too many points over the remaining standard rounds of the season, which have only got one more after this one. And then it's going to be at Daytona in a week's time before we then do make our way into the showdown format. And that will begin at Watkins Glen in 2 weeks from now. But Harvey Wheeler definitely want to pick up every point he can on the table before we do get to the bonus points round, because they can give and take very easily. And remember, this season, it's 2 60-minute and a 1 90-minute round rather than all being 60-minute rounds. But into the pits, the man who was the hero of the Hockenheimring in the wet weather conditions for Phoenix Racing, for Tom Cordy. Well, it's in now for his second and potentially final pit stop, but cuts this a bit early unless he decides to go for a shorter middle stint there to try and make up some ground, because this has not been a happy race for him. Another driver we haven't really talked about, Alan Lever battling with Dean Collins there. These two fighting over 13th place. Now, Dean has not made his secondary trip to the pit lane for strategy, nor has he made a trip to the pit lane for his drive-through penalty. So right now, Alan Lever having to try and keep Collins behind. They are batting on the road. Alan may not have remembered that Collins does have that drive-through at some point to take. In fact, I say that, Dean Collins may have already served it. In fact, I think he has served it now that I double-check my notes here, because of the simple reason, the fact it doesn't get registered as a pit stop on our timer. But here they go then, powering the one down. And coming down towards the next braking zone, it will be Molzan, number 1 in terms of chicanes. And right now, who's going to number 1 in this battle? It may be 13th in the interclass, but every point is precious to these drivers. And it's going to be Collins in the end, holding outside line. Alan does just try to outbrake Dean, but in the end, Alan Lever just cannot beat that McLaren on the brake set. Despite being the Porsche, it's typically known for its braking prowess, but even so, Dean Collins there being the last of the late breakers of the two of them. And now as we ride on board here, Alan Lever, the 9,000 RPM red line there for the 283 Porsche being reached on upshift. And well, he's going to try and power his way back past right now. And that Porsche can be very quick at a draft as well. Typically not known for top end speed, but take all the rear wing off it and extend those gears. It can be capable, but there you can see Collins right now trying to hold outside to inside. But Lever comes back and they're going to do the old switcheroo, where it's all being about the run towards Indianapolis. That's where you want to be ahead, of course, the final sprint before you do get to a more technical section of the lap. Two of them enjoying the back and forth. Now here comes Dean Collins. He'll now look to make it the third swap between them. Although he makes his way on the inside here, gradually drafting his way past. And we're getting ready for the Molzan braking zone here. Of course, the double right, that small kink, followed up by the very sharp and slow right-hander. And Alan Lever just tucks in behind again as Collins goes all in for it. Make that work out quite nicely, but now can he outrun Lever all the way down to Indianapolis, the one place where you want to be ahead? So really you want to be the number 2 car in this situation, as Alan Lever demonstrates the fact he's already started to pull ahead, but this might be a bit of a premature overtake, and perhaps right now Collins is thinking more about the final third of this run as they get ready to come in towards the second of the kinks, and then it will be into that final third. So Collins tucks back in for a brief moment and tries to pick up a bit of a draft, and as he does so, well, in fact, he's already getting back alongside before they come in towards the sweep. And as they do, Collins on the outside, the inside, and Alan Lever gives him the space there, and Dean Collins will take that place back. Great racing spec between the two of them, and they're enjoying themselves out there with 35 minutes to go. And well, right now Alan Lever tries a cheeky peek into Arnage, but that's not going to work. Instead, he has to wait a little bit as they now make the way on the final long straight up towards the Porsche curves. You can see in the rear of the picture there's Gianluca Rospo, 4th place club driver, and he'd like a part to play in this if he can. Although right now the way these two are very respectfully swapping the places back and forth, I think the answer is going to be he's going to need to get a little bit of a pedal on there to be able to do so. The Lever on the inside here, Collins holds that outside line, 2 wide they go in, and Lever will squeeze his way ahead as they now make the way into the air where you can go 2 wide, but you need to be fully alongside entering the Porsche curves and both to show each other the respect. But Alan Lever right now gets the clearance, although understeers into the final part of the Porsche curves, giving way to the Corvette curves. Not the way he wanted it to go there, and in fact goes very deep again here. Alan right now really struggling for what will be his tyres. I think they are very much past their prime, and two of them still side by side here as they come down towards the forward chicanes. Now does everybody, oh, bit of a touch between the two of them, and it sends Alan Lever into the pit lane. Now whether that was planned for Alan Lever, I don't think it was, as he makes his way on through, but he's going to make the most of it here. But a tiny tap, and definitely there Dean Collins saying to Alan, off you go, and Alan Lever goes on down the pit road. But I think this also will tie in very nicely with strategy, given the amount of time remaining. He will be able to complete the stint, to complete the end of the race there, and so we'll have to see who's going to come out then with the overcut for what would be Dean Collins versus the undercut for Alan Lever. But Tim Probert meanwhile side by side here with Thiago Reza for a brief moment, and Reza tucks back in behind. We're definitely now in a bit of a quieter middle period, although to be fair, it's not quite for too long because Troy Anderson has sadly been involved in a bit of an incident, I do believe, and therefore we are going to come back to find out what exactly has happened to Troy. His race is going backwards little bit by little bit. The Wild Road Motorsports driver just not having a happy day in the office. What was it on that number 15? So this was Troy Anderson making his way through the S's. This was, of course, where it went wrong for one of the Hexagon slow drives earlier on, and a similar situation there. But note the fact that Troy Anderson took too much apex curb, and that unsettled the rear of the car. So as he made his way over the slight elevation rise, that lifts the rear of the car up. The rear is already unsettled, and so with that elevation rise, we did see their very wide run for Adam Lynch. Had to use all of Tech Rouge and all the runoff area, and pick up a slowdown most likely for it. So both drivers here losing out, and well, that was just because of Troy Anderson on the inside then. Adam Lynch, I think, been blindsided by it a little bit, but still Troy Anderson making a mistake. Thankfully not too much damage to the car, and back to racing he has gone, much like Adam Lynch been able to avoid him. But we come back to your live racing, and there Casper Rotner weaving behind here. I don't know if that's a call for help at this point for the old dudes at Cars Amnesia driver, and I think as he makes his way on down, well, car going a bit slowly there, perhaps trying to get rid of a slowdown penalty, perhaps, and venting his frustration to the tarmac on the Molzan straight. But either way, and Steve Robin Power is closing quite quickly behind. But the Dane right now definitely having a bit of a tough race. But back to the front of Inter we go. There's Max Wheeler with Adam Watson for company now. Watson being the 6th place runner in Pro. Very quickly going to move into 6th overall. Take it off of Max Wheeler if he can. Just in front, there's Timo Gertner, the Well-Road Motorsports driver, who I think Watson would very much like to have a conversation with in terms of battle on circuit if he can. Max Wheeler here just simply abdicates the position and lets it go, because Ashley Brooks is 6 seconds behind, and right now Brooks' pace versus Max Wheeler, he is proven to be just that little bit fast. In fact, that last lap he did take 9/10 out of Wheeler, almost a whole second. So could we see a potential chop and change here between the two of them right towards the end of the race, whereas Max Wheeler just simply taking it nice and easy on the fuel tank, and perhaps trying to extend this middle stint, knowing he has got plenty of time to play with. Either way, if we do see Ashley Brooks carry this on, we could have a fight on our hands to win right towards the very end. Now, as for your leaders, well, 53.36 for Philip Hammer on the previous lap, over on Pro leader, we should point out. Meanwhile, a 52.85 for Harvey Wheeler. So, the Aversa Rapid Dry is still really trying to grind down that gap as much as possible. He's leaving nothing on the table here in that Ferrari. And, well, the Briton right now, if he keeps up this pace and the pit stop strategies are identical between the two drivers in terms of how long they spend in the pits, I wouldn't be surprised if we do see Harvey Wheeler within attacking distance in the final 15 minutes of the race or so. That time, Philip Hammer at 53.065, Wheeler at 52.699. But again, I suspect Harvey Wheeler here is having to use a lot more fuel to be able to achieve this pace consistently, not doubting his abilities, but just the fact that, of course, he has been very closely matched by Philip Hammer all season so far, and therefore Hammer might be saving some more fuel by comparison to give himself that shorter stop, so that gap may actually go back up come the end of the pit stops, rather than continue to come down, and Harvey Wheeler will have to grind it down one last time. But back to Jeffrey Damon we go, and he continues to play with his sparring partner there, Eric Gebhardt for 8th in Pro. They have got Wesley Van Rens just watching on here as Damon's trying to go around the outside. It looks to the inside of Dunlop chicane. And, well, onto the brakes he goes. There's a door open. Takes a lot of curb there. And what Eric Gebhardt says to him, what you can do, I can do too. As they both chop and change the curbs. They both get away with it. And Wesley Van Rens right now just watches on behind. The Revolution Free Racing in the 299 McLaren. Well, you can understand if he is thinking to himself right now, can they potentially stop fighting each other? Although he does have a comfort gap of 11 seconds to teammate Thiago Reza, who's the next driver in the Interclass. But I think more pertinently for Van Rens, he wants to chase down Peter Holt, who is now 5 seconds up the road. There you can see him briefly at the top of the camera. And right now, really just disappearing off into the distance as Holt following Daniel Kovac. And in turn, we're going to try and follow Ashley Brooks. So could we have a three-way fight on our hands in the Interclass right at the end? If Brooks can bring himself up to Wheeler, they start fighting. Could Holt get there right towards the end? Ooh, does that sound a tasty prospect? But, as we see, Van Brent watching on for the battle of Damon and Gebhardt. Damon on the outside this time. We get the inside of the main part of the chicane. And in fact, Gebhardt's going to go a bit wide. Big twitch there from Damon. Gebhardt not too pleased about being slightly forced out wide there, I think he would argue. And Miller Boyd now will catch up into the back of this, as Van Rens is the only driver out of draft in this situation. He's going to try and power his way past both of the pro drivers there and get ahead if he can. I think he's had enough of being behind it. He wants to get ahead of the whole situation. And Miller Boyd right now we ride on board with. He follows the snake train there as Gebhardt and Damon get ready for another battle, perhaps in towards the second Mulsanne chicane. In fact, the answer is going to be no. They just make the ones of the brakes and let it go this time. Meanwhile, just behind, Tim Probert. Well, he's got Ryan Abbott's company, with Ryan Abbott's now been passed for 16th place by Probert. And there we see our club leader still carrying on a very happy run. But meanwhile, change of foot in towards the Mulsanne hairpin. That's Adam Watson up the inside of Timo Gertner. So he's caught up to him, and goodness me, is he caught up to him very quickly. And well, as they make their way onwards, that last lap, that was the best part there. 1.5 seconds being taken out of the gap that Gertner had. So now he tries to come back here at Adam Watson. If Watson's going to hold this position by the time he clears Indianapolis and Arnage, something suggests to me that he may be able to go hunting after Hayden Young, who he has proven to be, on average, about 7/10 a second a lap faster than. And will that be in the hunt for 4th place if he can? But as he weaves his way for Indianapolis there, Gertner not trying to come back. And well, both drivers going up very wide there, using all the road. That'll be an off-track used up there by Adam Watson. One of many of the instant points available in this race. Of course, you don't want to pick up too many, otherwise you'll be seeing a drive-through penalty that's awarded to you. And Max Wheeler just watches on behind. Worried perhaps that Ashley Brooks is closing. There is Brooks. Although on that previous lap, how much did Brooks close up? In fact, it was another 7/10 a second. So Adam Watson continues to chase down Hayden Young as quickly as he can. There is Hayden making his way through our camera. The computer centre supported Send It Racing Machine. And 3.3 seconds behind Mikey Stewart, who he is gradually gravitating towards. He's got that gap down to 3.5 seconds versus Stewart on average at the moment. Again, there seems to be all chop and change here, and we're really waiting to see where everyone emerges come that final pit stop, which is now only about 5 minutes away, if that, given how long the drivers have already gone on this current stint. They won't have too much time left in their fuel tanks. But Ryan Clark, meanwhile, he continues to chase after Matthew Hunter as they come down towards what will be that braking zone for the Mulsanne corner very shortly. And right now still staying there, but definitely saving a lot of fuel with his Clark. And I think this is going to be interesting to see how they swap around. Now, one thing we should point out is that when Ryan Clark did pit earlier on, he was one of a very limited number of drivers who did change tyres in the pit lane. He changed all 4 tyres. He had a 50-second stop, so that definitely puts you in the ballpark there for a full tyre change. And Ryan Clark this time is looking for his way past Matthew Hunter. So as we come towards the end of this stint, I think he wants that track position. I think he's got the confidence that if he takes track position now, he'll be leading after the pit stop, and he will then go hunting after anybody he can find in front, including teammate Jordan Butler. But right now, 2 wide they come in towards Indianapolis. Hunter's not going to back out unless he has to, and in the end, Ryan Clark just simply dives on the inside there, and he'll make that happen. Hunter has no real response other than to tuck back in and follow instead. James Connolly trying to power his way around the outside there of Stevie G. That'll be for 9th place. Well, Harry Termina's moved forward, but we have had to the detriment of Stephen Park Hamilton, of course, a retirement. So that means that Stevie G stays inside the top 10. As Connolly moves up into 9th, the Team UKSimRacing Hill driver will see a lot of gravel being kicked up there by his sister team driver, UKSR Button of Alan Lever, who's taken a bit of a trip wide. He's brought it back onto the road there. So Connolly's next target is going to be Harry Termina, 5 seconds up in the road. From them, we come to Michael Schitzer-Kerderbach, who finds Tim Probert. And Probert, of course, remember he did take that pit stop right on the opening lap. And Probert right now on his 2nd stint. And well, I think it is going to be a 3-stop strategy here for Tim Probert. I don't think he's going to be making this a 2-stop at this point. So Schitzer-Kerderbach is actually going to lose the position. Whether he realises it or not, he will very likely gain that position back on strategy. The whole promotion of ASR drive will just tuck in for now. And I think we'll try to use this as an opportunity to save some fuel and really be as smart as we possibly can about it. Robin Pownier on the back of Pete Cox there. So these two have found each other now. They've been no strangers to each other in previous seasons. But right now, continue to make their way down towards the Mulsanne chicane. First of the 2 of them. You see their Capital watching on their distance behind. We definitely had some pit stops play out. We had Nathan Nance distance to pit, so we've had also Tom Wheeler in. And where has Tom Wheeler come out as a result of his pit stop? The answer is he's come out in 5th place. Splash and dash of fuel this time for the 333 driver. Verso Rapid Machine carries on here, and again it will be a shorter fuel stop because they have not got 35 minutes left in the race, which is how long the fuel tanks are taking them. They've only got the best part of 25 to approximately what will be around 22 minutes by the time we do see our overall leaders theoretically come into the pits. And the Verso Rapid Machine, that's on Wheeler right now, be hoping that he can jump back up into the top 3 of class, or at least 2nd place. I think that's where he was before he pitted, in fact. He won't be catching up to Ryan Abbott at this rate, I can tell you that. Jonathan Abbott's right now in a very much a postcode of his own. Jordan Maymar has also pitted, in fact, so I think Tom Wheeler is looking for that 3rd place, so Gianluca Rospo could yet be a contender against him for that. As we see the Simcast for Altitude 3M car making its way on through the first part of Mulsanne. And well, for Jordan Maymar at this point, having made that 2nd pit stop, you can see Rospo just up the road. There is Gianluca as the Deeb Motorsport driver carries on. But his battle is to make sure he's in the top 5 and potentially take the final spot on the podium. It's not for 2nd place. Maymar strategically is ahead of him for it as they come through. Stephen Parker Hamilton makes way onwards. Where's Christopher Bates? I think Bates is getting himself back together there coming out the pit lane. So in the end, Stephen Parker Hamilton will make his way onwards. The man who ended up in the barrier had to tow to the pit lane. When he comes on for MRC Endurance Team, he is likely to have to make a final stop at some point to put some fuel in the car. We'll have to see whether that's the way it's going to go. But he's not going to give up here. He's still trying to hunt some points down. The team definitely, despite joining the season midway through, they are trying to chase down a trophy in the Team Championship if they can. But we come back to your leaders. He goes another lap. He goes on to an 18th tour of the circuit. That's Philip Hammer. So therefore, this fuel tank is definitely going nice and long. But look who's caught up to him. Harvey Wheeler is there. And the Averso Rapid driver right now, he's definitely had to be quick. But that was a 2nd he took out of him on that lap. So Philip Hammer, I suspect, is really doing a huge amount of fuel saving here. Whereas Harvey Wheeler right now has only just got into really fuel saving distance versus Hammer. But surely that's going to mean he's going to be pitting at the end of this lap, given the average laps and the amount of fuel used on the opening stint versus this stint that we have available to us in terms of knowledge. He's at 14 seconds behind. He's not definitely touching these two. I think it's going to be the battle on strategy that could separate Wheeler from Hammer, unless, of course, Harvey Wheeler decides to go all in on the final stint and just make that ground down the hard way, which is on the road. And again, Philip Hammer is saving so much fuel now. And on that final stint, will he be actually doing a similar stint, or will he be going all in there? Could we see equality of the pace between the two drivers? We'll come back to Max Wheeler, meanwhile, all over the back of Timo Gertner. And still on the pursuit of the lead of the Interclass is Wheeler. As he heads onwards, we had Targo Reza come in, and we've also had a couple of other pit stops in the Interclass quite recently, including a second pit stop for none other than Peter Holt, and also a second pit stop, I believe, for Wesley Van Ren. So these pit stops are getting closer. Ryan Abbots comes in from the lead of the club class. Where does he re-emerge? The Team Lewis driver heads out the pit lane. He does so on the limiter for as long as he needs to be. Nothing more, of course. You never want to be on the limiter more than you have to be. Well, here's Jordan Maymart and Jordan Butler together. Butler was really caught up to Jordan Maymart in quite recent history. Has there been an error for Maymart, or has he in fact made a move there? Well, let's try and find out if we can. In fact, I think he has had a bit of an off-track only moments ago, and that explains why Butler is now with Jordan Maymart. So therefore, Butler has yet to take his second stop. So strategically speaking, Maymart is ahead. But on the road right now, he will not want to be passed there by Butler. It's only going to cost him time in the long-term process. Whereas Ryan Abbott's come out, well, he's come back out as your leader of club. And so it is really looking to be the perfect race for the Team Lewis 323 driver right now. No signs of anybody being able to slow this man down from taking his maiden win for the season. And he pounds his way down the Mulsanne. Meanwhile, what other battles are happening out there? Luke Sherlock found himself passed by Tom Wheeler, albeit I think yielding to Wheeler, letting him go rather than putting up a stubborn fight. Remember, of course, both drivers in different classes, with Wheeler being the club driver, Sherlock being your inter driver, and well, I think the two will try to work together. Also, Luke Sherlock has just left the pit lane, so he's heating his tyres back up, and on that strategy, it's just a splash and dash of fuel. And the crowd's here right now. Once he has got himself warmed up there for 5.9, I think he will be very happy to then go hunting and potentially take on Tom Wheeler. But we'll have to wait and see where his fellow class rivals emerge in the pit stop strategy chain. But back to Owen Paunia and Pete Cox, and they've got a friend with them, of course, Casper Brotner, the pro driver. And here they come on down towards Mulsanne hairpin. And as they do, well, Casper Brotner looking up the inside here. I think he wants that place for Paunia overall. I think he wants to try and clear them if he can before they do come into the pits that final time. So goes all in. Paunia decides he's not going to fight it. He will just simply stay behind instead. Corner they come, and as they do, back to the front. We have had a change for lead. Whilst we've been looking further down the order, Harvey Wheeler has moved ahead of Philip Hammer. How has that happened? Here's a quick replay to explain. So they have been quite back and forth, and I believe this was the final instance there back and forth from Mulsanne down towards Indianapolis. And this time it was Harvey Wheeler on the outside versus Hammer on the inside. With the second kick they went, and it was into the braking and turning point for Indianapolis, and Harvey Wheeler moving ahead there, and Hammer just simply tucking in behind. Nice and tight, and that will be all for the purposes of saving fuel. And coincidentally, as we come back to live racing, with Harvey Wheeler heading towards what will be the Ford chicanes, will we see him deflect to the pit lane? Or will he stay out another lap here? Has he found a way to make that fuel tank even bigger? The answer is no, he comes in, and Philip Hammer comes in as well. Interesting. So the pole position ASR driver, who has on average been a second a lap slower to Harvey Wheeler throughout the entirety of this second stint. So he's got to be doing some fuel saving, unless Philip Hammer's got an issue out there. And well, if so, then that's going to be a shock to the system, no doubt about it. But something tells me the pole promotion ASR driver is taking this lead back after this pit stop. As Mikey Stewart and Hayden Young are in, I think they're all going to be coming in now. Yep, they all pour into the pit lane. So the fuel tanks have gone as long as they can. The one you expect not to go into the pit lane will be Pete Cox, and the same for none other than what will be Tim Probert. But I understand Pete Cox had that instance, so therefore we'll see Probert come through first if he's going to go another lap. It's pit stop season for the final time today for the majority of the field, and 18 minutes left on the clock. Well, by the time they leave the pit, I suspect we're going to be looking more towards what will be 17 minutes on the clock for so many drivers. There's Tim Probert carrying on. We are expecting he will need to make one more stop, however, for the fuel that will take him to the end. But Philip Hammer, on call, re-emerges as your leader, and Harvey Wheeler comes out, and he will come back out behind. 2 seconds adrift, if that. So he's just within slipstream distance. But Harvey Wheeler right now, well, with a 3-second difference in the pit stop there between Hammer and Wheeler. We thought there was going to be a difference on the stationary time. In fact, to be a bit more precise, 2.6 seconds extra fuel had to be put in the car for Harvey Wheeler. And now this is going to be a sprint to the finish. Who will take the win? Will it be a second win of the season for Harvey Wheeler? Or will it be a 5th win of the season and in a row for Philip Hammer? Well, we've only got what is no more than a 6th of the race between us and finding out. But as we come back to Max Wheeler, he comes back out and he is behind Robin Pownier and Pete Cox, who've yet to pit. In fact, he's directly behind Pownier there in the interglass. So understandably, for Max Wheeler right now, this is just going to be a situation where he's got to grin and bear it a little bit. He still does have a 5-second gap to Ashley Brooks, who's also pitted, albeit Brooks having to take less fuel by comparison to Max Wheeler in that pit stop, so he has gained a bit more ground. But the lap time delta has actually been progressing in the favour of Max Wheeler. He has been the quicker driver over the last couple of laps, so I wonder if Ashley Brooks, in trying to save some fuel, has actually lost out in the longer term. As we do take a big sip of water there, as we get ready for the finale of this race. More drives into pit lane. Troy Anderson leaves, so does Darren Sharples, Dean Collins and Jonah Garospo. And Troy Anderson now comes out 14th in class, that's pro, and 24th overall. Sharples there just behind Jordan Maymar. Well, he pitted a bit earlier, so he makes his way onwards. And right now, Maymar taking a bit more fuel by comparison with his peers over the course of what was that pit stop. So for him, 27-second stop, he has lost on average about 10 to 12 seconds compared to many of those around him. But the game plan could be here that for the SimCast Altitude 3M driver, perhaps putting even more fuel in the car means he can be absolutely full attack. Perhaps his thought process is, right now, needing to be safe and go hunting after Ryan Abbott, should there be an error for Abbott's towards the very end. Let's see if that's going to be the reality or not. Steve Gimion now makes his way into pit lane as Ryan Clark carries on another lap, but this will be to retake positions, of course. He has already pitted, so Ryan Clark has completed all his stops for the day, and the Spectre Racing driver will take back 6th place in class, I believe. In fact, no, he won't, as Jordan Butler, his teammate, makes his way up the road. And how close will these two be? Well, the answer to that question is going to be about 5 seconds apart, because there is Ryan Clark making his way into view, coming through the Dunlop chicane, and 5.5 seconds there. So 6th and 7th is looking to be the situation for the Spectre Racing SimWorks UK pair. Is that the way it's going to be in reality? We will see. But whilst all this has been going on, and we've been keeping an eye on what's chopping and changing, well, let's keep in mind the fact that Timo Gertner right now with Pete Cox behind him. Adam Watson has broken away considerably there for 4th place in pro. Timo Gertner, meanwhile, in 6th at the moment. But Pete Cox glued to the back of him. But Cox will have to go into the pit soon. We're expecting him to come in at the end of this lap, given he went 1 lap extra on the opening stint. So this will be 1 lap extra on the second stint. Max Wheeler 3 seconds behind, the de facto leader of the interclass. But he has got Robin Pownier following him. Robin Pownier has yet to pit for the second and final pit stop. And it's Ashley Brooks, who is closing quickly. It must be said, and in fact, on the opening few sectors, Ashley Brooks has already gained 2 seconds this lap on Max Wheeler. I think Wheeler's had a bit of difficulty, or perhaps made a mistake. Also, he did have to try and negotiate. Robin Pownier will not have helped him at all. So Ashley Brooks right now has got the fire beating in his heart, and he is absolutely trying to blaze his way towards victory in the interclass based on what we think is the strategic order, and that would be Max Wheeler ahead of Ashley Brooks, and then it is going to be Pete Cox, as we understand it, or Robin Pownier or Thiago Reza, as they're so close. Speaking of the Brazilian driver, here he is following the club leader Ryan Abbott. He still has Adam Lynch behind him for close company, as we see the Eurotype Endurance pole sitter in his McLaren in the green and yellow machine. Not having any luck with regards to instant right at the start of the race, and therefore trying to just go on a bit of a redemption story. Is a top 5 on the cards here in the class, or is this going to be a finish outside the top 10 and a outside the top 5, and a very painful one at that for him? Pit stops about now for Tim Probert and also Robin Pownier, but not for Pete Cox. He goes another lap. Goodness me, surely he's not going for the 1-stop here, the Averso Fast driver. If he is going to do a 1-stop, I'd love to know how he saved the fuel in that second stint. I think he will be coming in at the end of this lap, because otherwise that fuel tank right now, I think the stewards will be looking at it and seeing if he's been able to make it essentially an inverse fuel tank in terms of capacity, much like the TARDIS from Doctor Who or Hermione Granger's bag from what would be none other than Harry Potter, being absolutely full of so many different items, and in this case fuel. But right now Pete Cox goes on the inside there of Timo Gertner and will take that place, and Gertner I think just wanted to tuck back in here and just use it as a bit of a slipstream ride. But as we have Pownier coming out of the pits, where does he re-emerge? Well, he drops well behind Reza, Lynch, Barker and Van Rens. They will serve their pit stops. Robin Pownier comes out. It's all the way in 9th place. So this gambit has not played off for the worst racing team ever driver. As he makes his way onwards now, has got a lot of work to do and not very much time to do it. Adam Lynch, meanwhile, battling in there with Thiago Reza. Is he going to complete what will be the successful defence in the position he tried to gain? The answer is yes, so taking that 5th place there. But now, of course, on to Tech Rouge they go. And once they clear that corner, it's then just the question of the long run from Mulsanne to Indianapolis. Not that long, to be fair, only the best part of what will be 3 miles. And for Adam Litch, he's now got to make sure he doesn't get redrafted past by Thiago Reza. He does have a distant toe of Ryan Abbots, but that's not really going to help him. And immediately there you can see Thiago Reza blast his way up past. And now Adam Litch will tuck back in. So it's to me to you. And well, it's all going to be about who's the leader going into Indianapolis between the two of them. James Connolly comes into the pit lane for his final stop. This will be his third visit to the pit lane after his first visit was for damage, his second for fuel, and his third one now for fuel as well. So a bit of a sad end to his day. And well, at this point, potentially looking at falling outside the top 5 of the class. So Jordan Butler comes through, Ryan Clark as well. And I suspect Matthew Hunter's too far back. He needs the first 17 seconds of drift. So I think James Connolly will be re-emerging for the pit lane in 7th place in the club class, because here is Matthew Hunter for context. He's currently running for SimCast Racing team there through the 4 chicanes in 37th overall. I think James Connolly is about to hit the limiter line, so Matthew Hunter will be close, but not close enough to pose a threat. But speaking of emerging threats, let's come back towards the front of the field. And there's Philip Hammer, there's Harvey Wheeler, and this battle is getting closer and closer between these two. Harvey Wheeler pulling out all the stops here to give chase, but Philip Hammer will surely have an ace up his sleeve as his own that he wants to deploy. But as we get ready to see them battle, we do go back in time to what happened to Hayden Young on lap 19. So this was Hayden Young into the braking zone there for the first of the Bolzano chicanes and just went straight on there. Well, not quite sure what's happened, other than the fact it seems to be an issue with the car, perhaps a failure of the brakes, and well, was able to get some degree of braking on and parked up there, going no further. Something technically wrong with the Send It Racing McLaren. Very unfortunate for him, given the fact he was chasing what was a top 10, if not a top 5 of the pro class. And well, he's going to be very upset about that, I can tell you. And well, hopefully he has a better day and they can get on top of that issue in preparation for Daytona in a week's time. I do believe what is going to be our all-important night race there as well. We'll have the floodlights on, and indeed it'll be late in the night. Get to see our drivers under the lights battle it out on the slipstream focused oval, and well, roval we should say, in the US state of Florida. We're coming back to our live pictures, 11 minutes still remaining, so this lap plus most likely another 3. At Philip Hammer right now, only 7 seconds to go. Harvey Wheeler, who has closed up so quickly, despite Philip Hammer being the strategist in the situation, whereby he was able to save enough fuel to be 3 seconds faster on the fuel gun in the pit lane. Harvey Wheeler right now, who we're right aboard with, he does seem to be seconds faster when it comes to laps, as he pushes on hard and hard here and wants to be very much in that draft zone. And once he's within half a second, he'll be very comfortable there. Takes a lot of curve through the final part of the full chicanes, and that unsettles the car, means he loses a bit of momentum going to the start finish straight. And you can see Hammer there coming all the way over to the inside barrier, trying to break the toe there. We are seeing this line being used as a means of trying to break the slipstream, but of course it does compromise their line going up into the Dunlop curve. It means they have a less smoothed out line. You have to put a lot more aggression on the steering angle as you then turn into Dunlop curve. So you straighten across the first kink before you do get to the curve, and then suddenly you've got to go full steering compared to what will be a much smoother gradual line from the outside all the way through. But Harvey Wheeler right now will feel as though he's got the tyres to be able to do this as he comes onwards. Meanwhile, Pete Cox is into the pits, and he comes in from the lead of the Interclass for that all-important final pit stop, but it will be a much shorter one compared to many of his peers as Max Wheeler makes his way back to the top of the Inter Tower, and as he does so, Ashley Brooks now 3.5 seconds behind, and Brooks definitely looking quick. 1.5 seconds taken out on the lap before, 1.2 seconds taken out on this lap. Can Brooks get there right at the end of the race? Could it be a final lap shootout between himself and Max Wheeler? At this rate, surely it will be. But then we look to Thiago Reza, falling up behind Ryan Abbots, the club leader. There's Adam Litch. There's Jack Barker closed up behind. There's Wesley Van Rens. We're suddenly going to have a 4-way fight here, potentially for the finals, but in the top 5 of the class. In fact, it's going to be a 5-way fight. Because Pete Cox comes out on what is a very long middle stint, and the Averso fast driver in the end threads himself right between Jack Barker and Adam Lynch. And well, he and Jack go a long way back, racing on the UKSimRacing GT3 Championship grid all those many years and seasons ago. But right now, well, for Cox, can he find a way to get into the fight with Reza and Lynch? And remembering, of course, Adam Lynch, the pole sitter, well, surely he'll feel as though he's got the pace here to dispatch Reza and break away. But is that the way it's going to work in reality? We're going to keep an eye on this battle as best as we can. As at the front, Philip Hammer and Harvey Wheeler now only 2 tenths apart, if that, as they come down towards the Bolzano hairpin. And as they do, the German driver here puts the car right in the middle of the road and says to the Briton, okay, so you've arrived, what's your game plan now? And Harvey Wheeler says, my game plan is to lead the race, as he looks up the inside into that braking zone. And Philip Hammer is not going to put up too much of a fight. His thought process will be, okay, give up the place now, take it back, of course, while we make our way down towards Indianapolis. And so get the better exit there in the Porsche, which you'd expect, rear-wheel drive, and inching closer and closer here, pulls out And now, how quickly will he make his way past? That is going to be the fault. He decides to go for it at the first kink. He'll get alongside. He'll get a nose ahead as well. And we won't be fully clear. That's 400 between these two as they come into the second kink. And now it's going to be the all-important part, which will be into that braking zone. It's a turn in. But Harvey Wheeler, they're staying on the outside. Hammer on the inside. It's going to be Wheeler who scoops back round the outside. And the Averso Rapid driver here, not flinching at all. And well, I think showing his body language here, which is, I want to be track leader. And Hammer, you're going to have to do something magical if you want to get past my fast Ferrari. But the reality could be the other way as soon as it does go that way. As meanwhile, a spin there for Ashley Brooks. He was chasing down Max Wheeler so quickly. And Brooks' charge after Wheeler right now has come to an abrupt halt. He hasn't lost too many places now. He's lost one overall position to Tim Probert. But other than that, he's not lost any class places. Peter Holt now is 4 seconds adrift. You can see him a little bit further back. He's not the blue Ferrari for Sendit Racing. That's Miller Boyd. But then you have Peter Holt. Here he is right now. And well, for Ashley Brooks, it's a small error, but an absolutely huge one in the context of things. What exactly did he get wrong? We'll get a replay to show you shortly. As meanwhile, Michael Schützer cared about fighting with Eric Gebhardt and Jeffrey Damon for 9th place in the pro class. And how will the fight is cost these drivers? Eric Gebhardt here finds himself almost being forced into a free wide there as Jeffrey Damon tries to squeeze his way into the midst of it all. And Schützer backs off and tucks in by both drivers there. So Eric Gebhardt is able to blast his way past just about versus Schützer, but Jeffrey Damon, he really is being a Dick Dastardly out there right now. But you've got to love Jeffrey for it, the way he's driving. The World Road Motorsport driver from the Netherlands. He is really trying to get into the mind of both Gebhardt and Schützer and saying, you know what, I could attack this at any time. I really don't care about working together, particularly now they're on this final stint and they do have a 10-second gap to Peter Holt or a 13-second gap to Miller Boyd. So therefore, these are the points they're playing for. And right now, try to look one way, then the other. But racing respect shown every step of the way. We always do love to see it, of course. And what a fight going on. But as I head onwards, meanwhile, an update in the club class. Crystal Bates has been able to make his way back up into 10th place on strategy versus CG. So therefore CG will be running 11th there. You can see him there in a distant view in the rear of the picture. Here is Bates, the man who's 10th in the class at the moment. Just up the road is Matthew Hunter trying to chase after Stephen Parker Hamilton. Still trying to make his way into 8th place if he can. Parker Hamilton is still trying to see if he can break away and go after James Connolly. Although that's an 8-second gap to Connolly. I think that's going to be a bit too big of a bridge to cross. But as we come back to Damon versus Gebhardt, 2-1, they go in towards the forward chicane. Jeffrey Damon going around outside inside. They both go wide, and through goes Schützer as the pole promotion ASR driver makes his way onwards there. And well, goodness me, in the end, Damon and Gebhardt neither one wanted to back out. And then Schützer just simply saw them both making their way off the road and said, okay, I'll pick up the pieces, thank you very much. But now can he make a breakaway? Thiago Reza running full ahead of Adam Lynch at the moment as they come up the rise. And as they do, odds the brakes it's going to be, but Lynch right now still not able to find a way through as much as he's tried to. Ryan Abbots really is the wolf in sheep's clothing at the moment, the club driver who doesn't want any part in this into fourth place battle. But there you can see the top two of that battle for fourth place and into. And then you've got Cox, then you've got Barker, then you've got Van Rens. It really is grouping up, and Ryan Abbots right now finds himself all in the midst of it, and I think they're wondering what's he doing here. Well, as they come up towards Tetra, will Abbots just simply step out of the way, or will he just stay in the group? Bearing in mind, of course, he does have almost a 30-second gap to Jordan Maymar, so he doesn't need to be a part of this. He can afford to simply lift off, fall to the back of it, and then just watch and wait in the wings. But as they make the way down, we take a look back at some big buzz, including the error for Ashley Brooks on lap 21. So this was Brooks making his way in towards Mulzam. This week got it wrong, chasing down Max Wheeler, who was so tantalisingly close, but Brooks in the end carried a bit too much speed for the corner, tried to get the power down, but the rear left tyre just did not grip up as he tried to get traction, and that's where it went around. And then we had, of course, this between Jeffrey Damon and none other than Michael Schützer amongst others. So this was the run in towards Indianapolis initially, and this is where we thought they were going to go free wide as they came down, battling for ninth place in pro, with Eric Gebhardt forward a part of it, and in the end, it was Eric Gebhardt who'd led them in, and, well, Jeffrey Damon able to get the squeeze ahead of the German Schützer back. But towards the end of the lap, and then suddenly, it was a little bit of tears between the drivers, as this was Jeffrey Damon trying to go too wide for the forward chicanes, looking to the outside in towards turn 30 versus Gebhardt. They went in too wide, and as they came through there, both drivers showed each other every bit of space, but then rolling off the apex curbs and just went a bit too deep, too much curb. Eric Gebhardt in the end was run out of road, and well, I think understanding Damon there will apologise for that one, and Schützer just squeeze his way past it all, knowing at the end of the day, well, if they're going to fight like that, I don't need to be a part of it. But we come back to the side-by-side between Wesley Van Rens and Jack Barker. Again, remember, this is not the final lap for these drivers. The final lap is the next one. So therefore, I think this is all going to be just about positioning for that final lap at the moment. And they won't want to cost themselves any time when Thiago Reza is definitely having to work more and more to defend against Adam Lynch at this point. I think he's going to try feeding the pressure here. Not quite his first podium of the season, but it will be a fourth place finish. And a very strong result there, one of his finest of the season so far. That's what it's all about for the Brazilian as he makes way onwards. He has had a very consistent run of form in terms of top 10s and top 5s, but right now this could be his best result on the cards here if he can keep Adam Lynch at bay. But Lynch lock in and then tuck it back in. This is all the question of when is he going to go for it. He's trying to get into his rival's head. As then we do look a bit further back up the order to Harvey Wheeler and Philip Hammer. These two have swapped around. They've been swapping back and forth on the straight. They come out of Arnage. This is going to be the rehearsal for the final lap. And right now, both drivers try to get as much information of each other and know when it's right to strike, when the driver in front or around them is the weaker of the two. And Philip Hammer here getting alongside it towards the Porsche curves to where they enter at this point. And it's going to be Hammer just ahead, but they're constantly swapping this back and forth, no doubt about it. Harvey Wheeler's going to fight for it here, too wide all the way through. They make way past the static camera and Hammer backs out there. And Harvey Wheeler back into lead. So he shows to Philip Hammer, if you go for the move on the inside into the Porsche curves, I will take it back. I'm not afraid to do it. As they come out to the Corvette curves, then one more lap to go. 3 minutes left on the clock. By the time they complete the next lap, it will be their last. And right now for Harvey Wheeler, can he hold on here to make it his second win of the season and bring himself right back into the championship? Or is Hammer going to make it that 5th win in the row? Such a powerful win at that. Meanwhile, we had a bit of drama further down the order for Jeffrey Damon, I do believe, has had a big drop down. And that's at Indianapolis. It's gone very wrong. As meanwhile, we do see just in front of them, Thiago Reza still having Adam Lynch and keeping it behind. So what exactly has happened between them? We'll hold the phone on that because here comes Adam Lynch. A much better run out of Arnage corner. And Lynch trying to look to power his way past Thiago Reza at this point. About to get his nose ahead just very slightly. He's going to have the inside into the Porsche curves. That's the most important part here. That's where he's going to have the confidence he can attack this. Or Reza trying to hold it around the outside. He's going to go for it. But Adam Lynch sweeps his way in. And now Peacocks gets involved. Ryan Abbots has let Peacocks go. Meanwhile, Wesley Van Brentens and Jack Barker now enjoying a fight for 7th place here. So these two have decided that their fight is for 7th rather than for 4th place. But can you blame them for it? I'm sure they're going to have fun with it. But whilst they do make their way towards their final lap, what happened to Jeffrey Damon? And this was Damon battling with Michael Shinsuke back. So in the end, they have both dropped the car very Gebhard and tried to go around the outside and lost the rear of the car there. Now, was there a tiny touch between the two of them on entry there? They were very close. I think we might be able to get an alternative camera angle for this. And as we do, let's just keep a close eye. I don't think there was. It looked like there was, but I don't think Shinsuke has touched Damon in that instance. But Damon, they're going wide into Indianapolis. And in the end, the left-hand side tyres losing grip, and that's what sent him to the barrier. And you've got to feel for Jeffrey Damon. He's been pushing so hard. He's been having so much fun. But unfortunately, the fun has stopped for him as he now has to try and recover the car and hopefully make it to the finish there and just pick up some points. Not the top 10 finish he was hoping for today in the pro class, without a doubt. But Jordan Maymar, meanwhile, now catch up to Tom Wheeler. It's all coming together right at the end. They're bringing Luke Sherlock to the party as well. But this is going to be the fight for 2nd place. Remember, this is not the final lap for them. They've got one more to go. Our leaders already on that lap. We are going to come to your overall and pro leaders shortly, although they are making their way onto the Mulsanne now, so it will be the back and forth swap between the two of them. So our focus is more going to be when they get towards the Mulsanne hairpin and the run down towards Indianapolis. But as we can see here right now, Jordan Maymar glued to the back of Tom Wheeler and hoping for an opportunity to perhaps steal away that 2nd place in, as Wheeler's pace has not been as strong quite recently. Although saying that, Jordan Maymar as well has found himself in that back and forth, so the two really locking horns. But from then, we come back to the leaders then. Here they come into the 2nd of the Mulsanne chicane. Leaders overall, as Harvey Wheeler there decides to say goodbye to one of the cones. What did that cone ever do to Harvey? We'll never know. But as he comes out to the 2nd chicane, Philip Hammer there now, half a second back. But Hammer has sat behind so far all the way down the Mulsanne. The game plan here for Harvey Wheeler surely has got to be, and he'll be worried about this, is that he needs to stay ahead. But Philip Hammer is thinking the only time I need to be ahead is when we get to Indianapolis. After that, it's all about a straight up fight. And now coming down in towards that braking zone. And will he get the better exit here? Powers his way out, and we're building up the speed little by little on that gap. 3/10 on exit. Now, full throttle for both drivers here. Harvey Wheeler immediately positions himself centre inside to the kinks. Then he gradually brings it back into the middle of the road. The pole position of ASR Porsche gets closer, little by little. Moving forward, inching into a 10th now. But then it's going to be 900s, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. He gets alongside. And here they go then, as we do have Webber tries a lap down, putting it aside. Doesn't want to interfere in this battle. Hammer on the inside. Harvey Wheeler holds around the outside onto the brakes. But he's got brake early there. Hasn't got the grip. They touch slightly. Hammer slightly elbowed out. But that'll be a racing instant contact between the two of them. Now in towards Arnage they go. And Hammer's going to have one more run at trying to take the lead before he gets to the most technical part of the lap. And here it goes out the corner. But Harvey Wheeler does go a little bit wide. He brings it over then to one side of the road, trying to break the toe. But he can only do that once. You can't make multiple moves on the straights. That's known as weaving. And as he gets ready now for the Porsche curves, Philip Hammer again gets in closer and closer. Feeling out making that move all the way, but it's not going to work out. So Harvey Wheeler right now puts the car right in the middle of the road here. And well, Philip Hammer looks at the switchback. It doesn't work. He finds a face full of Wheeler. And Harvey Wheeler instead holds his ground. So going through the Porsche curves here. And right now Harvey Wheeler with 6/10. He does his things. Oh, he loses it. Harvey Wheeler loses it coming out of the Porsche curves into the Corvette curves. And Philip Hammer takes the lead. I don't believe it. It's only what is 0.7 miles to the finish line, and Harvey Wheeler making a huge error, and Philip Hammer now, all he needs to do is get this home. In towards the Ford chicanes he goes, and as he does so, well, Harvey Wheeler has recovered the car, I do believe, but right now it's going to be second place for him. But for Philip Hammer, he won't be denied. He may have been second going on to the lap, but at the end he's going to make it 5 wins in a row as the pole position ASR driver. And you've got to feel for Harvey Wheeler, what could have been his second win of the season, end up in despair. It is second for the Aversa Rapid driver, but he drove a brilliant race, and taking third, it is going to be Mikey Stewart who comes on through. As he does so, flashing the headlights there, full of pride is the Access Sim Sport Coach driver. Another third place finish for him, and in fact Harvey Wheeler, I do believe, being demoted down their base to our timing tower, although don't quote us on that to be fair. Adam Watson will take 4th, with Timo Gertner finishing the race in 5th place, and then it will be none other than Tim Probert in 6th, ahead of Max Wheeler, who brings on home another Interwin on his return to the grid after missing the Hockenheim ring. And well, the Aversa fast driver untouchable here today when others were making mistakes. Daniel Kovac will finish in 6th, just ahead of Miller Boyd, and then we will have Ashley Brooks runner-up in the Interclass day when it could have been a chance to win, but a mistake cost him. Pete Holt comes on through in 9th there, and then we will see shortly will be Michael Schutzer-Kedeback coming through for the 12th place spot on the road. And well, it does seem as though our timing tower now is doing whimsical things here, ladies and gentlemen, so we're going to keep an eye on the class positions. Adam Lynch will hold on for 4th place in the end in the Interclass ahead of Thiago Reza. We'll get you a replay of how that changed, but meanwhile, coming on through for the club win, it is going to be Ryan Abbott's his first win of the season, and the Team Nubis driver in a world of his own today, absolutely delivering and dominating in club. But who will be second in the class? It is going to be Tom Wheeler for Aversa Rapid, who makes his way through. I think we are going to focus on class finishing positions here, with our timing tower deciding that it doesn't want to make its mind up as to where everyone is finishing. But here comes Tom Wheeler through to complete his race, runner up in the club class, and then we will see taking third Jordan Maymar, who in the end I think ran out a bit of steam right at the end of the race, and it has not quite worked out for Maymar as much as he's huffed and puffed, but in the end I think he's run out of steam just before the finish. But still on the podium, he'll be pleased with that. And as he comes on through, well, we'll have to take a look back and see where we did have a bit of a battle right at the end there. Some other drivers have already towed to the pit lane. But as we look to Gianluca Rospo, he still needs to finish this race, as does Luke Sherlock. So we'll get to see them all come to the finish very shortly. And indeed, right now, Gianluca Rospo coming on through, and he will very shortly make it 30th place here based on what our timing tower is saying. But again, let's consider that it's going to be 4th place in the club class, and we'll start driving the Deep Motorsport driver, his best result of the season so far, I do believe, from memory. And then we do have 5th in the class for Jordan Butler as he heads towards the timing line, and we'll have behind him Ryan Clark. It is going to be a 5th and a 6th in club class day for Spectre Racing Simworks UK. Some big points coming to them in the team's championship. We'll see James Connolly on a recovery drive here, bringing on home in 7th in the club class. A frustrated day, but he's been able to make the most out of it. And then we're going to have Luke Sherlock coming through, albeit in a car that's been very heavily damaged. What's happened to Luke Sherlock right at the end? That's not good view for the privateer. Can he make it to the finish in a car that's definitely crabbing? I think he is going to be able to. He just gets to the finish line. And then Matthew Hunter comes on through there, the Simcast Racing Team driver. He will take home 8th place in the club class, just ahead of Christopher Bates. And then we will see Steve G is going to make it on home in the end. I think he is going to take a top 10 here in the club class, unless I'm very much mistaken, as he winds his way through the corners. And well, for him, these top 10s don't come too soon, but he's definitely going to be picking this home today. We'll get the confirmation of the provisional results shortly. Again, with our time tower deciding to play ups and downs all the way through. The GTR driver has kept it cool, calm and consistent once again. And can you fault him? And to be fair, at one point was running as high as 8th in the class. Although his pace, to be fair, not quite able to match up to the likes of Crystal Bates, nor say it was likes of Matthew Hunter. But at the same time as well, sometimes you just got to be in it to make it to the finish. And the points will come. And every lap turned is a learning lap. As DG will complete his race there in 38th. And the time tower does decide now to settle itself down. So it's made up its mind. And well, we can confirm that is 10th in the club class there to DG. Congratulations to him on returning to the top 10. And David Pilcher parked up out there, and I think his race, unfortunately, has seen the car run out of fuel, albeit I believe he will be classified as a lap down. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, just before we do take a look at the race results, I think we did have a bit of a back and forth final lap for what was Tom Wheeler and Jordan Maymart. And can we get a bit of a replay of it? I think we can. And we're also going to get a replay of a couple of other things that happened. This was Jordan Maymart, of course, with Tom Wheeler. So, on their final lap, of course, they were batting right at the start of it and going onto it. This was her second in the club class. And we'll begin the rundown towards the first part of the Mulsanne chicane sequence. It was Maymart who tried to go round the outside. And Tom Wheeler then had nowhere to go other than to let that go. But then, as they bolted the way out, well, you see the Ford Mustang will come back. And as it powered its way onwards, well, staying nice and close there, building up the speed and acceleration. And running its way down. Well, what was the next part of the story? It was simply that Tom Wheeler here would get the overspeed and would pull one way then the other. No, he decided to throw a bit of a dummy there, but Maymart kept the car pin. He didn't move that much. He'll get away with that. And in the end, Tom Wheeler being made to use the dirtier part of the circuit where all the rubber and marbles gets chucked over the course of the racing day. And Jordan Maymart, they're taking a cone with him. No, you can't have that, Jordan. That's not souvenir worthy. As he made his way through the Mulsanne chicane part 2, well, Jordan Maymart still able to hold on. So Wheeler then had to have another go at this. But Luke Sherlock just watched on behind. Now, I'm a bit worried here. What happened to Luke as a result of this? Because we saw his car, we see his car in absolutely good health. And in suddenly, I think it's ended up in a bit of bits towards the end. Well, Jordan Maymart looking up the inside then for the Mulsanne hairpin at this point. And coming down to the braking zone, went all in. Tom Wheeler gave him some space to do so if he thought he could be daring enough to, but he wasn't able to in the end, couldn't outbrake him. So making the way out of the corner, it was then going to be Jordan Maymart having to get one last run out of this if he could. But what was he going to be able to do here? Built up the power, most certainly, and had a run all the way down towards Indianapolis. But what was he going to do? When was he going to go for it was the question. Wheeler covered off the inside there, as would perhaps be expected, as Hendrik Zilka made his way through the camera shot. And, well, then we did see what was Maymart looking all the way round. Too wide they entered. And who was braver on the brakes here? Maymart went all in, and Wheeler in the end did have to back off a little bit. And Wheeler tried to look round the outside, but Jordan Maymart, I think that was going to be the move made. But it wasn't, in fact, because Maymart then got deep. So Wheeler did come back again, and Luke Sherlock split himself between the two. And I think that ended the battle between them, sadly. And it was all because Maymart made one small mistake at Indianapolis. And after a daring move, he got that stop. I think that would have been good enough for second place. But unfortunately today, for Jordan Maymart, just was not enough. But what happened to Luke Sherlock, meanwhile? Well, we'll stay with him all the way to the end. Given we spent almost the majority of the lap with him, it would be rude not to. And, well, we do look to Luke Sherlock's car if we can. Get the camera on it. There we go. So making their way on through the round of the Porsche curves there. All looked absolutely fine initially. And, well, when did it go wrong for him? Oh, my goodness, and both into the barrier there. What on earth has happened there? We're going to get a replay of that. That was completely unexpected. Both cars just being propelled to the barrier. And, well, I've never seen that. Can we get the on-board? Let's take a look. This is on board with Luke Sherlock. Let's listen. Oh my goodness, the car twitched and he counter-steered it, and at that speed, at about 130 miles an hour, counter-steering like that when the car was already gone, like a pendulum, there was no coming back for that. What about Jordan Maymart? What did it look like from his perspective? Well, this was the on-board from Jordan Maymart. Let's listen again. And the car had already twitched once, and I think then he reacted to what was happening to Luke Sherlock, and when that reaction, it just made the situation worse, and that's why Luke Sherlock lost out, and so did Jordan Maymart most critically in the battle for second place in the club class right at the finish. But what about Harvey Wheeler, perhaps the biggest casualty of that run of the final quarters? This was his big error, if we get a replay of it, and here we go, ladies and gentlemen, and this was when he was leading the race as well. And as he made his way through, watch the car here, it's going to come loose. Took a lot of grass and took too much curb as he transitioned from the Porsche curves to the Corvette curves. And that's what caused it. Literally dipping that front left tire onto the grass before the curb. One thing you never do, it's a taboo thing. And unfortunately for Harvey Wheeler, he went the place he shouldn't have gone. And in the end, the lead was taken from him just like that. Still took second, but what a costly error there. Faultless for the first 22 laps. On the 23rd, the most important one, he did get it wrong. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, we make our way back to your live circuit side pictures. And with it, let's take a look at your provisional results, subject to Eddie Stewart's inquiries, as we do take a look to the scenic view. And after an incredible, a spellbinding 90 minutes of racing here for round number 6 and the UKSimRacing Sunday GT3 Championship Season 19, hosted by SimRacing International and brought to you on iRacing here at the circuit does 24 Heures du Mans, Philip Hammer taking victory for pole promotion with ASR, his 5th win in a row and of the season, ahead of Verso Rapids Harvey Wheeler, your runner-up 9. It could have been the win if not for one critical error. 10 seconds behind, Mikey Schurtler for Access Sports Sim Coach, and well, to be fair to him, another podium at 3 third place in a row. He's making a habit of being Mr. Third Place, but I don't think he'll mind right now, because that's definitely going to cement his position inside the top 3 of the championship as the season goes on. Adam Watson fought his way out to 4th place as Simcast for Altitude 3M, but couldn't quite make it to the podium, was just 3.5 seconds adrift, with Timo Gertner there in 5th place. A Wild Ride Motorsport, a solid drive for the German driver, and went under the radar a little bit and managed to get Tim Probert just enough for Senate Racing, where Probert's chipped the trip to the pit lane at the end of the open lap. Unfortunately, costed a chance there of a top 5 for Senate Racing. It didn't quite work out. Max Wheeler, your Inter-winner, returning to winning ways once again in the Interclass after missing our previous round. His third win, no, not his third win of the season, his third podium of the season, his 2nd win of the season, and it will extend his championship lead. Daniel Kovac, 8th there for DRX Esport, able to break away from Miller Boyd alongside Eric Gebhard and Jeffrey Damon in the end to take that 8th place. Miller Boyd finishing behind him for Senate Racing Bulls, only 4 attempts adrift, and then Ashley Brooks, runner-up in the Interclass. The Access Simwatch driver almost had the pace of Max Wheeler in the closing stages until a mistake of his own out of Bolzan, costing the chance of chasing the win. Pete Holt was the third 2 seconds behind and closing towards the end for Senate Racing Bulls. A solid turn to the podium for him. And Michael Schützer back 12th place overall ahead of Eric Gebhard, with Adam Lynch and Thiago Reza completing your top 15. And Adam Lynch find his way past right at the end for the Eurotitles Endurance. Wesley Ramrens couldn't quite get involved and in the end opted to sit behind his Revolution 3 racing teammate, and ensuring therefore they would take home what would be a 5th and 6th for the class, with Ryan Abbott's just behind, your club winner there. His first win of the season for Team Nubish, a monster win. And indeed, this is a sign of a turn of pace in the second half of the season for the British driver. Pete Cox took 18th ahead of Jack Barker, with the made for racing driver in the end a 2nd adrift, but ahead of Jeffrey Damon, who was 2 seconds behind after that late error for the Wild Ride Motorsport driver, caused him to miss out on what could have been the top 10 in the pro class. Outside the top 20, 21st it was Casper Brockner on a tough day today, but ahead of Robin Paunier, with Darren Sharples, Hendrik Zilka and Tom Wheeler completing runs 25th, with the Verso Rapid driver at his Ford Mustang bringing on home the runner-up spot there in the club class after the late error for Jordan Maymar, and between them, Nathan Anstiffs and Dean Collins, with Jordan Maymar 28th there completing the club podium. Alan Lever took 29th ahead of Gianluca Rospo, with Tom Cordy, Jordan Butler, Ryan Clark, James Colley, Luke Sherlock, Matthew Hunter, Crystal Bates and Steve G completing those who finished on the lead lap down to 38th place. It was a lap down to Stephen Parker Hamilton and David Pilcher, and we did also see there 4 laps down, Troy Anderson. 5 laps down, Hayden Young. And then we did see the non-finishers of the Class 5 for Tobias Hakanson and Harry Tuaminen, the Hexagon slow drivers there, having a miserable day here at Le Mans. And also non-finishers of the Class 5 for Jack Wybon, Daniel Pace and Cy Anthony. But coming to individual class finishing positions, because this is where the points are made and paid. And in pro, we see Philip Hammer taking his 5th win in the row, ahead of Harvey Wheeler, who returns to the podium, and Mikey Stewart there is third place in a row. But from the Access Sim Coach driver, 3 seconds behind, it was Adam Watson, with Timo Gertner completed the top 5 for Wild Ride Motorsport, and Senate Racing's Tim Probert was only 3 seconds further adrift. Daniel Kovac, Miller Boyd, Michael Schützer and Eric Gebhard completed the top 10, and with that 9th place for Schützer the run of 1-2 for pole promotion with ASR has definitely come to a halt, but perhaps he can be back on the pace next time out at Daytona. Jeffrey Damon, a length there, best of the rest, Wild Ride Motorsport, ahead of Casper Brockner, with Nathan Anstis finishing off the finishing order there on the lead lap. It was 4 laps down as classified for Troy Anderson, and Hayden Young being the last classified finish there, 5 laps down for Send It Racing. Then to the Interclass we go. And as we can see, Max Wheeler taking his second win of the season, his third podium for Reverse So Fast, in an inter-championship that's definitely heating up, but he's staying one step ahead of the competition, with Ashley Brooks run up there for Axis SimSport with SimWorks, and only 2 seconds behind Pete Holt, but the reality was that Ashley Brooks should have been a second or two behind Max Wheeler at the finish, if not for his error. Pete Holt fights his way through to third place there for Racing Bulls, 17 seconds clear of Adam Lynch, who had to go on his own storming drive after taking pole position, but an early mistake at the Mulsanne chicane number 1, so it falls to the back of the field, but goodness me, did he fly high to fourth place for Eurotitus Endurance. He should be proud of that one. Revolution 3 Racing, 5th and 6th there for Thiago Reza and Wesley Van Rens, just ahead of Pete Cox and Jack Barker, the made for racing driver, involved in that fight for the top 5, but could never quite fully establish himself in it. And then we did see Robin Powney and Darren Sharples completing the top 10. The old dudes in Cars Midlife Crisis drive was followed up by his teammate of Hendrik Zilk, had a very anonymous race in 11th for best of the rest, with Dean Collins, Anne Lever, Tom Cordy and Luke Sherlock completing those who finished the race on the lead lap and were classified as finishers, and then sadly non-finishers for Jack Wyborn and Cy Anstey due to their early retirements. Then to the club class we go. And here we can see Ryan Abbott's your winner by a staggering 33.5 seconds of Team Lubish ahead of Verso Rapids Tom Wheeler. But Wheeler, to be fair, will be very happy to have held on to that second place versus Jordan Maynmar, who put the pressure on in the closing stages. The Simcast Altitude 3 Esports drive, we gutted to have fried away the chance for a second. At the same time as well, another podium. It does mean the team are moving forward in the Team's Championship, and his own campaign is on a good rise. Gianluca Rospo, a season best result there for fourth place. The Italian, the Deep Motorsport driver, absolutely stellar. 11 seconds ahead of Jordan Butler, who completed the top 5, but the Spectre Racers SimWorks UK drive followed up directly by his teammate Ryan Clark, as they did have a bit of a photo finish across the line. James Connolly, 7th there, ahead of Matthew Hunter. Christopher Bates and Steve G completed the top 10, and then we did see a lap down behind the GTR driver. It was Stephen Parker Hamilton, ahead of David Pilcher, with Tobias Hutchinson and Harry Turmin being the first of 3 retirees, all classified as non-finishers, as we did see behind the Hexagon slow pair, old dudes and cars amnesia's Daniel Page with his very early retirement and an unfortunate end to the race before he really got going. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, that completes our racing action here today from the Le Mans circuit. Indeed, we say goodbye to the European continent for a brief while. But just before we do say goodbye to it and end this broadcast, let's take a look at those championship standings provisionally after 6 rounds of racing. And as we can see in the Pro Championship, it is Philip Hammer who now leads by 140 points, with 5 wins in a row and 6 podiums throughout the season. Head of teammate Michael Schütze-Kederbach, who with that 9th place finish loses some significant ground to his teammate, and now equal points versus Mikey Schutt, who's 3 third place finishes in a row. Well, can he make it a 4th for next time, or even go higher on the podium? Because right now he has got some increasing pressure from Harvey Wheeler, who's returned to the podium, albeit a chance to win, going to a 2nd place instead, he's now only 10 points behind. Timo Gertner as well, he's still within arm's reach, with his very consistent round of top 5 finishes continuing now, 3 top 5 finishes in a row, and indeed, Tim Probert's falling behind a little bit by 6 points. Adam Watson, meanwhile, 294 points, closing up the delta there to the top 5, and Miller Boyd not too far adrift, even on 258 points, although Daniel Kovac with that 7th place finish, a result he'll be very happy with. He moves himself back into 9th, 14 points ahead of Jason Baxter, a non-finish today, sadly for him. In fact, a non-attendance day, I should clarify, for World Ride Motorsports. And then Nathan Anstis and Troy Anderson completing the top 12 of the Pro class, with Nathan Anstis just creeping ahead at Troy Anderson by a slender margin of 6 points. Then to the Interclass, and here we can see Max Wheeler, a 2nd win. He now moves his lead to 124 points ahead of Wesley Van Rens, who squeezes his way into 2nd place, as does Ashley Brooks into 3rd, both creeping ahead of Robin Powney, whose 9th place finish has seen him fall to 4th. However, the battle for 2nd is on, because it is only a grand total of 6 points separating at 2nd, 3rd and 4th. And then we do see behind them Tom Cordy, not the day you want to shout home about today after his heroics in the wet of the Hockenheim Ring, and the Phoenix Racing drive on 258 points, now looking very vulnerable to none other than Revolution 3 Racers Thiago Reza, who holds 6th on 252 points. It's then a further 36 points back to Pete Cox Reverse So Fast, with Dean Collins 10 points behind him. And Adam Lynch and Luke Sherlock will complete your top 10, with Jack Wyborn and Darren Sharples round out the top 12 there in the Interclass. They're both very eager to chase down Luke Sherlock and break their way in when they can. Meanwhile, to the club class, and here we can see it is none other than what is Tom Wheeler, who leads on 430 points to Jordan Maymel's 374. May not have been the win today for the Averso Rapid Ford Mustang driver, but another podium, and Tom Wheeler gradually opening up that gap a little bit more versus Jordan Maymar, who knows there's even more work to do, with that 56-point gap right now definitely looming large. James Conley slips to third by comparison with his 7th place finish today. Not the result he wanted, and definitely one of his weaker performances, matching his season worst so far from round number 3. And then we did see Ryan Outs' win propel him for Team Noobish all the way up to 4th place, 14 points ahead of Jordan Butler, but still the best part there of 30 points adrift from the top 3. However, he has announced himself as a championship contender with that result. Daniel Pays 6th there on 290 points, 24 behind Jordan Butler, but in turn 14 ahead of Gianluca Rospo, and the Deep Motorsport drive led by Matthew Hunter for Simcast Racing. Then we do have Jim Fox, not in the grid for this round. We hope to see him back in a week's time at Daytona, and Tobias Huckunson is non-finish, not gaining the ground there on the roadkill Racing Privateer, and it's having to worry about Christopher Bates, who's now only 16 points behind. As Ryan Clark completes the top 12 there in the club class, with a 6th place finish there, a happy result for him, one of his best, and he sits there in 12th at 174 points. As for the Teams Championship, we see pole position with ASR continue to extend their lead, and therefore perhaps the bigger question now is what's going on in the fight for the runner-up spot. Averso Rapid, well, they have had a good set of results today, but if it were not for that drop of the win for Harvey Wheeler, they could have closed the gap a little bit for pole position with ASR, but instead now they find themselves in no man's land. But Simcaster Altitude 3M with another pair of strong results. Adam Watson and Jordan Maywell feel confident that they're still in that fight for the championship crown, although they've got to make sure they continue to shake off Averso Fast and Revolution Free Racing, who sit within touch distance of a grand total of 104 points behind. Then we do see outside the top 5 of the 552 of Revolution Free Racing, it's 488 there for Spectre Racing SimWorks UK, and their results today have definitely earned them the right to be in 6th, moving 6 points ahead of Team UKSimRacing Hill. Conversely, they've slipped a little bit, have the Hill outfit dedicated to Damon Hill, and then access in with sim coach for no Martin Kenyon on the grid for this round. They've relied on Mikey Stewart, and his 3rd place finish keeps them well and truly inside the top 10 hunt of 464 points. It's further 32 down to Wild Road Motorsports, Jeffrey Damon and Timo Gertner, with solid points going their way, particularly for Timo. And then we do see Phoenix Racing there, completing your top 10 on 396 points, with no Graham Vivers, but definitely Tom Corley here today, and unfortunately dropping some major points, and therefore they are very much at risk of falling outside the top 10 at Daytona. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for us to wrap up. Thank you very much for watching. And if you have enjoyed today's show, and perhaps you're sat there right now wanting to know how you can get on the grid and go racing here at SimRacing International, well, to do so, all you need to do is join our official Discord. Invite link available at the bottom of the screen. And when you do, you can get on the grid on any of our ongoing series, which do include, of course, the Thursday GT3 Championship, of which we run 2 splits every Thursday evening in its 13th season. And we'd love to see you on the grid for that if you're a weekday racer, with 4 different driver classes, all very closely and intensely matched. Alternatively, if you enjoyed today's broadcast, or you sat there thinking I want to be on the grid on Sunday evenings for the UKSimRacing Sunday Showdown Championship in its 19th instalment, well, of course, we've got spaces available on the grid, or at least on the reserve list, so make sure you get signed up if you're not already, because we'd love to see you on the grid there. But if you're a fan of the older GT class racing machines, the GTE machines as they were known, Grand Touring Endurance, we do have our 3rd season, which has just got underway. We're going to be bringing the broadcast as if it were live tomorrow evening for round number 1, and that runs on Friday evenings every 2 weeks with a big focus on endurance racing in terms of distances of the races. But if you're looking for something brand new, our biggest ever series as approved as a Motorsport UK Esports approved championship, it is the SimRacing International Transatlantic Trophy. It all officially gets underway this coming Wednesday for its season opener, and that'll be running every 2 weeks, dedicated to GT4 and GT3 McLaren machinery. And whether you're a fan of a McLaren or not, we promise you one thing, get on the grid for that. It's an absolutely brilliant teams championship, and you'll find someone to race with, no doubt about it, up and down the field. Are you looking for something far more casual? Perhaps you're sat there right now thinking, I just want to dip my toes in and get some practice. We've got you covered there as well, because we have 3 races every week in our practice league. So you're an esports professional or a rookie racer, there's something for you here at SimRacing International, and we'd love to see you join us on the grid. But we'd also like to take a moment, ladies and gentlemen, to say a big thank you to our series and league sponsors, who do include Carmate, Mon Technology, the GP2 Group, and lastly, but by no means least, we'd like to say a big thank you to Motorsport UK's esports division for recognising us as a recommended community. We're very grateful for that recognition here at SimRacing International, and long may it continue throughout 2026 and beyond. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to pack up our bags, as it's time to make our way back to the US of A, and we'll be heading to the US state of Florida in a week's time for the Daytona International Speedway. It's going to be a 60-minute feature race under the floodlights, I do believe, and whilst the race in action will be on Sunday, the 16th of August 2026, we invite you to come join us as if it were live on Monday, the 17th of August. And whilst Philip Hammer seems to have a little bit of fortune in sight, as well as a lot of pace, he definitely was put to the task today by Harvey Wheeler, and he still leads the championship with a absolutely insane unassailable advantage as he continues to chase points in the Pro class. Meanwhile, in the Interclass, Max Wheeler back to winning ways after missing the Hockenheim ring, but knowing he's got plenty of pressure behind him, none more so than from the very capable hands of Ashley Brooks. And in the Club class, well, we have seen Tom Wheeler continue to maintain his lead. He may not have been the winner today, and it is the win of Ryan Abbott's that will have everyone concerned. Has the Team Newbie Stride just turned a corner, and is he going to turn a whole new chapter in the championship story and potentially be the one now to put Tom Wheeler under pressure? Well, for all that's about to see how it all continues, be sure to tune in next time. But until then, we've been SimRacing International, you've been tuning into the UKSimRacing Sunday GT3 Championship, and I've been your host and commentator, Paul Walsh. And until next time, ladies and gentlemen, as always, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, and most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night.